All right, Skeptic Minds, Ep.2. Uncle Winters and
I'm Brock Epperson.
And I'm Kaden Peterson.
Kaden's gonna be our host that's joining us now. He missed episode 1, but he will be on pretty much every episode, from what I hear. So
Hopefully.
yeah, and so we'll get into introducing him for a minute, and then today we're gonna be kind of talking about the meaning of life and different kinds of
age-old question: what is the meaning of life?
right, and kind of different perspectives on it, like religious perspectives, atheist perspectives, all
and
sorts
our
of
perspectives.
different. Yeah, and our
I think
perspectives
we're
as well.
both gonna, maybe we're all gonna conclude on maybe what we each think is the meaning of life. Maybe we all agree, but
Yeah.
I guess Kaden, you wanna just kind of tell us about yourself, who you are?
Yeah, I'm a male.
Thank you for clarifying.
6'1".
That's what I had assumed, but like no presumptions here. I'm not making any assumptions.
No, I'm kind of new into getting into philosophy. I grew up Mormon until I think it was 2015. Started questioning religion, and then it just kind of led to more questions about life.
What made you start questioning religion?
It was actually kind of a scary question, honestly. It was like I don't know. It was kind of always in the back of my head, but I knew if I questioned God, then I was gonna go to hell, But it was something that I kind of finally did one day. I just I think it started with death. I was just like, I got fixated on it because it seems like you hit a certain age and you're like, well, what is gonna happen?
Yeah.
Like, is it gonna be okay? Like, you start having like that existential like anxiety.
There was a lot of things about death that just didn't make sense to me about religion.
Yeah, and like you're going to church, and like there's nothing wrong with it, but it was like these questions I had in the back of my head that I felt like I couldn't ever ask.
I'm sure you probably had those questions like, okay, the baby that dies like of cancer or whatever, how
Yeah.
did they ever do anything wrong? How is it fair to them? Like
Or the people like that believe in like Buddhism, who
just
are
never
really
even
good
learn about
people.
it. Yeah.
And I just have never really even heard of the LDS faith.
Exactly. Now I don't have enough information to like argue any of the religious points, on any of that.
I got you covered there.
Because I didn't. It wasn't like I was practicing it too much. It was like I just attended church, was a part of the culture,
Right.
anyway. But yeah, I just questioned. I started looking into death, and it led me to questioning God, and then it just led to a bunch of questions about like, and it crumbles your whole house of cards when you question that too. And I think
For
that's
sure.
also so scary because it's like. That's all your morals, everything
There's
is
so
right underneath
many
you.
benefits to being religious. Like, I want to write a book about that one day. Even though I'm not religious myself, I think there are so many benefits that are derived from religion that like most people wouldn't even think about. Like one aspect of it that I found could be really beneficial for a lot of people is the idea of having a permanent father figure, like a permanent someone who is watching over you and kind of like
And loves you.
not only that, but also is like when you do something wrong is disappointed in you. Like that it's a motivating factor in doing the correct things and being your best version of yourself because you feel like you have someone to disappoint. Like if you're not your best self, you're disappointing God. And like who worse to disappoint? For sure. And like there's just so many random mental like these benefits that I feel like most people don't even realize, or just that like feeling of never being alone. Like someone's always gonna love you, someone will always care about you and be watching over you to make sure you're okay. Like how great of a feeling must that be?
For sure.
Like that must be so comforting. Like I wish I could be religious.
Totally, and every bad thing that happens to you, like you can be like, oh, it's part of the plan.
Yeah.
That has been set for me. Like
Yeah,
this is a challenge that he's put in front of me,
It was just meant to be.
and I'm supposed to go through it.
My
And
child
then-
died. It's just for the best because that's what had to happen in order for me to become my best self.
Yeah. And I do think that like I'm not going to go into any sort of anti-religion rant. I don't think ever on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm probably not getting too far into that.
Yeah, but I do think that people tend to have their own beliefs that they don't realize, and they just pick what they like from religion that reflects their beliefs.
It does
and
seem
sometimes religion can influence people to go further, but I think that people tend to already have a moral belief that they just have reflected off of religion and kind of justify their beliefs that they haven't really thought about with religion, they justify it through that. And
Yeah.
and like you were saying before, where there's this father figure who's like disappointed if you fail on your morals, or approves if you succeed on your morals.
And not even necessarily morals, just like general life actions, like if you
Right.
getting that job, or like whatever it may be, going to school.
Yeah, success in general, and morality, like almost every aspect of life, which kind of religion, like, puts its fingers into every part of your life. It
Gives
seems.
you some meaning to life.
Yeah.
Whoa, nice connection.
See what I did there?
Yeah.
I think kind of like, so tying back to earlier or a few seconds ago, how you were saying people will believe in a certain religion because it kind of coincides with their already presupposed morals and ideas. And I think it's kind of a circular thing in the sense that we're a Christian culture, which means that we're going to be raised with a pretty Christian moral system and ethical system. And so then you're naturally going to agree with Christianity and their moral system because that's how you've already been raised in a Christian influenced system.
Yeah. I feel like I always hear like I don't know, probably not the dog whistle, but like I always hear the term Judeo-Christian values when people describe the values of America, and to an extent I kind of agree, where there's a lot of Christian values that are reflected in
it's just so
politics
ingrained in the
it's very
system.
ingrained.
Like that's what our entire culture was based on.
And so I think that even if you're not religious, like some of like, I don't know, random values from Christianity or Judaism work their way into even like secular.
100%, yeah. It's something we can't really escape. Like,
For sure.
Yeah. But did you want to share more about who you are?
Oh yeah.
I think they got the gist.
Oh yeah. Oh, and I should also say, Kaden's my cousin. So, this podcast kind of consists of people that are,
For now.
huh?
For now.
For now, what?
Oh, I thought you were gonna say it consists of people who are related.
Oh yeah. Well. Oh yeah.
Because I mean, we're not having guests on here, I think. So like,
yeah,
they
true.
won't be related. But as far
I
as
get
the
you there.
host,
I thought you were saying like we weren't going to be related, like me and Kaden. I'm like, how are we not going to be related at some point?
Yeah, maybe I should have mentioned that before. But yeah.
But yeah, so it kind of consists of people that like we're already in each other's circles, largely just because of
By
family.
force. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like none of us chose to be friends with each other,
Yeah.
but here we are.
Yeah, and it was like, I guess it kind of was random coincidence that me and Brock became friends. But I mean, me and Kaden are forced to be friends.
Yeah.
I mean, we're kind of forced to be friends too. We live together. Like,
Oh yeah.
I don't know, at least be somewhat friendly towards each other.
Yeah. Even though you're extremely irritating.
Just sorry about it. And we figure, hey, might as well start our podcast if we hate each other so much.
Mm-hmm.
Make it interesting.
Yeah.
For sure. So, shall we get into the topic, the meaning of life?
All right.
Let's do it.
Cool. So, I guess I'll start where, for me, and like I'll do this disclaimer again, where I'm not 100% on all of my beliefs. I'm not gonna be hardcore about them. I'm not gonna be pushing them on anybody. I hope I'm not pushing them now.
Let me say real quick. So by meaning of life, we're saying it like, what is the objective meaning of life, if there is one?
Right.
Like that's what we're kind of discussing. Like, is there an objective meaning to life? And if there is, what is it?
Mm-hmm.
And if there isn't, then various subjective viewpoints on it.
Right. Like, is there something that we can point to be like, oh, this is like
This is why we're
100%
here.
like this is objective, logical, that we can point to this being the meaning.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't think that there's anything we can really point to being the meaning. I do think that meaning tends to be entirely subjective. And you can kind of come up with your own meaning. And for me, like that was an issue growing up where I was raised in a very secular household where like religion just was never brought up. And I felt like I was for years going through kind of an existential crisis where I didn't understand what the meaning was, and I felt like there needed to be an objective meaning to life. And I feel like it kind of made me look towards religion, but I never really got on board with any religion.
When did you go through this?
Probably through junior high, high school.
Okay.
Right around the time that I was kind of going through a depression.
I was gonna say I knew you were struggling then.
Yeah, and like once I graduated high school, I really stumbled upon this like philosophy thing, and it's kind of helped me learn that meaning is kind of subjective, or it's entirely subjective in my opinion, and it allows you to create your own meaning, which I find to be a pretty beautiful thing, where wherever I want to go in life, I can ascribe as much value as I'd like, or meaning behind it as I want, and realize that it might not be important to anybody else, but it is to me.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's like
It's freeing.
yeah,
Oh, for sure.
Instead of it being given to you, you get to go
Pursue it yourself.
pursue it and create it yourself.
I think it's such an interesting parallel how this world seems to be complete, or it seems to be apparent complete freedom. Like you can do whatever the fuck you want. It's complete freedom, and yet you have no free will.
Yeah.
Like it's such a weird they don't reconcile at all, because you can do whatever you want essentially. Like you essentially have all the freedom in the world, but despite having all the freedom, you have no free will. But yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with you on your point. Like I think that meaning is whatever you, like the meaning of life is whatever you make it. Like there is no objective meaning to life.
There may be something discovered in the future,
Right.
but for right now,
Yeah.
I don't think there's any way we can.
There's
point
no
to
reason.
anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like saying it's subjective is kind of the default position for now, where we can't prove that there's anything objective. We can, like, in a literal sense, we can make any subjective meaning. So, like, there's proof for the subjective. There's literally none for the objective.
I mean, there's like an objective meaning to life, but about a subjective goal. Just kind of like with morals, or objective morals, but about a subjective goal. So if your subjective goal is for humans to prosper, then the meaning of life is to reproduce. Or like it is for humans to continue, then the meaning of life is to reproduce, and it's that simple. But like that's still a subjective goal of, it's subjective to humans for humans to want to continue. Like if you just look at the earth, there's no reason for humans to continue. Like there's no good, there's no like objective value that humans have being alive, or our race being continued. And so like,
yeah, there's nothing you can point to in the universe or describe in the universe that will say that humankind continuing to exist is correct or good. It's subjectively a human perspective that the continuation of our species is good, generally.
Especially if you take the entire grand scheme of things and don't even look at Earth specifically, but the entire universe, how subjective it is for humans to continue. Like,
right.
We're gonna, like, in the grand scheme of things, humans being alive, most likely, I have no clue what the future will hold, obviously. Maybe we end up saving the universe, the Milky Way or whatever, from some black hole. I have no clue. But like, most likely, objectively, there's no reason for humans to keep living, or like for our race to continue, for our species to continue. And also like another so if you look at, if you view human, or like if you view the world through a non-religious secular perspective, with evolution in mind, then like essentially humans are just animals. We're not any special or any different from them. And if animals, like it, and if that is true, then for humans to have a meaning to life, then animals would as well. And like, I don't think that pretty much anyone or most people would ascribe any meaning of life, meaning to life for animals, besides maybe
Vegans.
Survive.
Or,
Yeah. I guess vegans might, but
yeah, and I mean, I think you're coming close to an analogy that I have in my head, where to animals, it's a subjective thing that they continue to survive. Like their subjective meaning is quite a bit less complicated than ours, where we can find meaning in art or
it's so much less
cinema
complicated.
Yeah, like art meaning to us is like so broad and varied from person to person, whereas with a lot of animals it tends to just be to survive.
Yeah.
And I think that for certain animals, like there's a little bit more complication that arises. But again, it's still subjective because, I mean, obviously humans and other animals aren't literally the same, and we have different meanings behind things. But I don't know. Do you have any perspective on it?
I've agreed with both of you so far.
Yeah. Cool.
I can tell we're all kind of stating things that we've all discussed in the past that we all kind of, all three of us kind of agree on.
Yeah, we all have kind of influenced
Dude, you just
each
broke
other.
the third wall. Are you kidding me?
But yeah, we've all talked quite a bit, and I feel like we're all of a very similar mindset on a lot of these topics.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely have disagreements about a lot of these things, but I feel like we're all really good about not becoming too attached to these beliefs or the ideas, and being able to discuss them rationally and logically. I mean, so obviously sometimes we'll have lapses in judgment or logic, and we're totally okay to come back around to a better way of thinking about
or maybe
these
even
ideas.
just like the complex will kind of take over our personality or persona in that moment, and we won't be thinking with a mature, clear-headed like intellectual perspective, but rather like the complex is taking over our way of thinking in that moment, and so it might maybe more emotionally influenced of a reaction.
Mhm.
And like so there might be some disagreement, and like you're still holding on to this one idea out of like attachment to your ego and like a little bit. And so I mean I feel like that is natural, but it's something that we try to make sure it doesn't happen as much as possible.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
mean, and I feel like we're both generally pretty good about that, and the few times that we've hung out and stuff, seems like you are too.
Thank you.
No problem, man.
Yeah, I feel like we've all kind of figured that the not getting angry or overly emotional about the topics,
Or offended, like
or
I think that's
offended
a big
especially,
thing.
like
yeah.
I feel like even when it comes to like me and Brock living together, when we are talking about random things that like need to be done in the house or whatever, like we're pretty good about analyzing and like I don't know, giving advice to each other without becoming offended,
Yeah.
which I feel like is a pretty healthy relationship.
Yeah, I feel like that's like this is something that I feel like a lot of people, maybe I'm putting myself on a podium or like above people by phrasing it this way, but I'm saying I think people should strive for that type of interaction where in conversation or debates or argue, like however, whatever form of communication, you approach it with an open mind and a willingness to weigh what the other person is saying and change your opinion. Because as soon as you like go into something without being willing to change your opinion, you're just going to be stuck in your old ways and like hold on to old-fashioned ideas and beliefs and just never grow. And I think like the only way to grow as a person and grow oneself is through learning and through like gaining new information and new perspectives. And so if you're just holding on to the exact same ones, you're never going to grow. You're just going to be stuck the same person for 50 years or whatever.
For sure. And being open to other people's ideas opens them up to your own ideas as well, I think, where
True.
people can see that you're open-minded about whatever they're saying or talking about,
And you're actually weighing it and like
you're
not just
considering
shoving it off. And
you don't come back immediately with a response like, no, that's wrong because so and so this XY. And I think it makes it so the other person will take time to also consider your positions. Not all the time. Some people are pretty darn stubborn, but
This seems to be the problem a lot of people have when it comes to the debate of like Western and Eastern philosophy. Because I've talked to most people I know are really into like Buddhism and stuff like that. And one thing that they always tell me when I start describing some of the Western philosophers, is that it seems kind of harsh and is too logical, and it doesn't have the 50% of emotions that it should have, since we're emotional beings. And so it seems like it's okay to have an emotional attachment, but not so strongly that it blinds you.
Clouds judgment.
I feel like I don't even know if it's necessarily a good thing to have emotional attachment, but I think it's a good thing to recognize that it's natural for people to have an emotional attachment. Like I think it might be better to have no emotional attachment or no emotional bias when approaching these situations, when it's supposed to just be logically based, and you're trying to find like completely logical, sound reasons or conclusions, obviously as sound as you can get. I think you want to remove emotion as much as you can, but I think you do need to just be generally aware that emotion will influence how people think, and so you can't really expect everyone else to think with no emotion, or like to have views and opinions that aren't emotionally based.
Right.
So
yeah, and it seems like especially with modern day politics, or probably even past politics, that emotional arguments have always been the arguments that win elections or votes or whatever it may be, because people just tend to be
it's the
pretty
same
emotional.
exact thing that has been the most effective way of getting to people to follow you, or like people to support you, whatever it may be. Look at Hitler. Like you appeal to their emotions,
For sure.
and like that's the exact same thing that's happening now. And the fact that works so well is baffling.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you can just appeal to people's emotions, like it's so obvious that they're appealing to emotions too, and it just makes me think like how dumb, for lack of a better term, how dumb are these people to allow their emotions to be appealed to like that? Like they hear we're gonna protect our borders, and they're like, yeah, like let's protect them, like we're the best country. We're gonna have to fix that sound. I probably made that so loud, but anyways, like they get so riled up and so into these different like these very light ideas that don't make any sense, or like that they're just not logically founded, but they appeal to their emotion, and
then they're almost using it, they're getting excited about an idea that justifies perhaps a prior prejudice or anything like
100%,
that.
yeah.
And I'm not, I agree that like the example that you gave about like building the wall and keeping them out or whatever, like that tends to be a Republican position, and I think that Democrats do it just as much. I like all politicians or any political party, like it's always it seems to be an appeal to emotion, and very rarely to data or logic.
I feel like it's just because it's been evident that appealing to logic does not work.
Yeah.
Appealing to emotion is 100% more effective, and that's, I think, why everyone's doing it now as far as politicians. Like,
for sure.
I don't know. That's one thing I appreciated about, like, I didn't agree with all of his ideas, but Andrew Yang, he seemed to actually give logical answers.
Right.
And he had sound reasons for the things he believed.
Yeah,
and he didn't appeal to emotion. Like, he gave logical answers, good, thorough answers, and he seemed to know what he was talking about. Whereas now, like, you look at the two presidential candidates, and it's like
just emotion, arguments, and
exactly, just trying to sway people based off emotion. No reason, no logic, no like this is a good point because, and giving an argument. It's just appealing to emotion.
And once you really have once you've understood the appeal to emotion, it becomes very frustrating when people start to use it.
Yeah.
And it's just like it makes, if somebody's using it on me, it makes me feel like I'm almost being patronized or
like they
demeaned.
Exactly. Like it makes me feel like they think I'm stupid.
Yeah.
Like they think that this would actually work. And it does. It works for a majority of America. Like, but I forgot we were talking about the meaning of life. We got a little sidetracked there. But I guess
it still kind of ties in, because I think whatever you put your meaning into tends to be kind of an emotional thing, and that doesn't make your meaning necessarily bad.
I think once you accept that but if you accept that there is no objective meaning, then the subjective meaning will be emotionally based. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you can still take actions and come to conclusions based on your feelings on things, and it doesn't always make it bad. It doesn't always make it good. I think it's kind of circumstantial whether or not to use this tool, I suppose, in like evaluating ideas.
Yeah. And especially when it comes down to like making decisions about things that are related to your emotions, like with a girlfriend or boyfriend, and like where you like draw the line as far as how much you think logically versus how much you think with your emotions. I think you do need to take into account your emotions in those scenarios for sure.
Yeah, like if you logically think about something, like whatever it may be, I don't know, whether it's like allowing somebody to treat you a certain way or whatever it may be, like if you logically think about it and be like, okay, there's no harm in this logically, but emotionally, like it would tear you apart to allow somebody to do something to you or to be doing something, and it would maybe tear your partner or friend or whoever apart, and that needs to be a factor, I think, in some of your logical thinking is, or I'm not saying you specifically, but like people's in general, is they need to also factor in how they will feel about certain things.
I'm wondering, is that still considered logical thinking though, and not emotionally based thinking? It's just they're logically thinking about their emotions and what is logically best for their emotions rather than thinking with their emotions, if that makes sense. Because I feel like at least that should be the goal. I feel like that's how you properly resolve whatever mixed emotions you're feeling, is by looking at it logically instead of allowing your emotions to get worse and worse and getting like more caught up in however you're feeling and then acting and behaving that in that way. I feel like it's better just to still approach whatever situation regarding your emotions you want to with a logical standpoint rather than be influenced by your emotions.
I'm not saying allow it to be an influence on like the entirety of like perhaps like these premises that lead you to a conclusion, but rather allow it to be a factor. Try to detach yourself from it as much as possible and think about your emotions. Like, so to make this I think a little bit more clear is like in a moral sense, for me, I feel like everything's neutral. Like it's not good or bad until we've explained or given a reason, justified the reason behind it being good or bad. And so if there's something that's neutral, that if you think about it logically doesn't harm anybody, but then like taking the action or not taking an action may emotionally like make your well-being worse. In that sense, like you need to factor it in. Like,
could you give an example?
So I'm trying to think of an analogy. So drinking beer, maybe, for an example, like starting basis is drinking beer, you know, there's some negative health effects, but there's some positive, perhaps social effects. Personally, I feel like it evens out to where drinking tends to be neutral in an isolated like instance.
A controlled, oh yeah.
Yeah. But let's say like whenever you drink, you just feel like absolute garbage whenever you drink. And maybe this isn't quite an emotional thing, but like let's say for the example that it just makes you emotionally very depressed, and it just makes you like suffer more than you ever have.
Okay.
Whenever you drink, it doesn't mean that drinking is bad for everybody, and it's still a neutral thing, but for yourself, for your own morality, or not necessarily morality, but for your well-being, I think it would make it so drinking is a bad thing, but for yourself.
Yeah, and I think that like kind of goes with what I was saying. Yeah, just like think logically, but about your emotions, like rather than just be emotionally influenced.
For sure.
Yeah. But
Yeah, and I think like the contrast would be, if drinking beer makes you feel like super depressed and awful, it like if you were to all of a sudden start going out and saying like we need to have another prohibition, like I think at that point you're allowing your emotions to influence your logic too much rather than factoring in your emotions to the logic. Because I feel like we may be explaining the same thing, but
Yeah,
for
I
me,
think we are.
whenever you're saying like have your emotions influence something, I feel like it's influencing the entire argument rather than it being a factor in the argument.
yeah, so I think we agree. Yeah.
Okay.
It's just I'm probably phrasing it poorly then.
Yeah, or it was, perhaps it's my perception.
Who knows? But I mean, like I want to get back to the meaning of life because that was kind of the topic of the episode. But we both all discussed our ideas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we can kind of get into a general view of what the meaning of life is and where people derive their own meaning of life from. I think a lot of people just get their meaning of life from religion. Like they think that is their purpose. Is like essentially life has, like life isn't the meaning, or like life isn't the goal, or like life. I don't know how to phrase it well, but like this is only a stepping stone in the actual meaning of life, in the sense that like this is only one stage. This is the shittiest part of your eternity, of your life, and this is like, I mean, maybe it is the most meaningful though. Like let's take a Christian perspective. Perhaps it's the most meaningful part of your existence or your life, because in this life dictates whether or not you go to heaven, where you spend eternity. So
Yeah.
but like I feel like that is such a depressing, like to already have a preset meaning to life, or a meaning to life, an objective meaning to life, I feel like would be the most depressing thing ever, as you're here for a purpose. Like you're almost a robot in the sense that like you were made for a reason. You were programmed to enact a certain purpose, and I don't know. It's I feel like that'd be so trapping. Like you feel trapped, and
For sure.
Without having that logically sound in like Christians though, like having that like meaning of life is subjective. It seems like they already live that out though. You know, if someone's religious and they've done every deed which they deem good, but they just sit at home, they don't have a family, and you know they barely work, barely make money, and they just do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But every circumstance that they've come across, they've always tried to do what's good to get them into heaven. For the most part, it seems like they would be depressed and hating life. So it seems like they're already acting out.
Yeah, and I've talked to some people who are religious and about religion being like, it feels like sometimes they're having to almost suffer through their life until they get to the afterlife.
yeah,
And I know probably the majority of theists don't feel this way, but I know that there are theists out there that do feel like they just need to get through it. Like they're spending their time on things that they don't really care about. They're just trying to get through day to day. They're trying to act in accordance with whatever rules their religion kind of has for their whether it's an afterlife or
they're just trying to get through life. They're not actually living.
Yeah.
They're just surviving. Like
Yeah, they're surviving enough to be able to get to, like, air quote, like the fun part.
And
That's
that
such
was
a sad way to live. Like you can see those people like on the street when they're walking
I feel like that
around.
was definitely more prevalent of an issue back in the day when like religion wasn't as personalized. When everyone had like
It was
a
more dictated.
Exactly, yeah, more strict understanding of like religion was a lot more strict. And like that was a Nietzschean critique of Christianity, was that it devalues this life, and it basically puts the priority on the afterlife, what is after you die. And I have a huge issue with that personally, because look at it this way: even if you do believe in God, I feel like you still have to give some brevity to this this thought, and it's, you are guaranteed this life and nothing else. You are not guaranteed. You might believe that you have something after this life, but you're not guaranteed it. So given that, why would you not try to make the most of this only thing that you're guaranteed?
For sure.
Like I feel like you just have to try and make the most of this life because it's the only thing we know for certain that we're going to get. The rest is just a promise or something based on faith or a hope, but it's not guaranteed. And
Yeah.
I feel like you just have to, like, that's a thing that makes religion so difficult is like, it discourages living your life to the fullest. It discourages experiences and trying all these different things. It discourages the bad things in life and the bad experiences which help develop character, and like it discourages all of those things. And if this is the only life that we have, at least in my view, I want to have as many experiences and as many different memories and all that. Like I want my life to be as deep as possible and to have as much content as possible, and I don't know, live it however I want to live it, rather than have my only thing guarantee be dictated by someone else.
Mhm.
Like that's so hard to get around for me.
Yeah, and I think from our perspectives, I think we all agree with this. And from other perspectives, I think that I think like a matter of fact thing is that you can look at it from the atheist or theist side, where you can be an atheist and you can see like the lack of objective meaning and become very depressed or have existential crises from it.
Yeah.
Or you can be very happy and love the opportunity and like just how many doors you have available to you. And then you can also be on the flip side of being a theist, and you can allow it to demotivate you to fill your cup by the end of your life, or experience as many things as you can and live your life to the fullest. And then on the flip side, you can, as a theist, you can also see it as heavily motivating to fill your cup up to the fullest and live your life to the fullest extent and be like outrageously good.
Yeah. I definitely don't think that these are like indicative of who someone is going to be, or like what view someone has, but
Or their perspective, whether it's I guess this is more of like a optimist versus pessimistic view of atheism and theism. And
Yeah.
I think I think it ends up kind of coming down to the person and how they
and I think
end
just
up viewing
also
life.
how much, I don't know, because so like I adopted nihilism pretty heavily, and then like that totally spiraled me. Like I was already in a state of depression and had no friends and was eating and sleeping terribly and just wasn't taking care of myself and was doing drugs, and so I was in a bad spot already. And then I started reading All Too Human, or Human All Too Human by Nietzsche, and learned about nihilism and the idea that there is no meaning to life, and like that just spiraled me, because I was like, why the fuck am I even here? Like, why do I force myself to keep living when life is miserable if there is no meaning to it? Like if there's no goal to it, if like I'm just here for no reason, then why do I keep going? Like the world is just, it's, yeah. But then I kind of realized like that's beautiful. Like the fact that there is no meaning to life, that I'm not here for a purpose, it makes life that much more beautiful, that much more freeing. And so yeah, I think it's just kind of like the perspective you have, but also just how much knowledge you have. I don't know, at least that's what it was for me, is just learning more and gaining more knowledge. I don't know, like I still accept that there is no meaning to life, but it's not a depressing thing like it used to be.
Yeah.
I know we're talking about subjective meaning, so I'm curious to actually hear what you found to be your subjective meaning.
So, I mean, so very recently I've come around to the idea of a possible meaning or purpose or life mission or life goal, whatever you want to call it. And that would be to rework the cultural values or the way people think, the things people appreciate and the things people desire, from what it is now to more about self-growth and ambition and individuation and community and like compassion. basically reworking the value system and changing just, I guess, what all of humanity prioritizes and what we seek and what we do with our lives, and trying to change that, quote unquote, for the better. Obviously that's subjective, but I think that a lot of people would be able to agree that this subjective value, or these subjective values or goals or habits are beneficial for one's life. And so that'll include, like, I don't know, meditating and like adopting some Eastern philosophy as well into our Western culture. But I think that's something I've come around to in the past like 2 to 3 weeks. It's a pretty recent idea. And so I'm not sure 100% if this is what I'm going to do with my entire life, but I think that would make me feel, if I died having accomplished that in some way, I think I'd feel pretty good with myself.
But I'm only curious because I know that I'm asking questions because this is stuff that I've struggled with. But I know it's sometimes hard to remind yourself of your subjective meaning, and especially when you're in a poor mindset because like events going on in your life are, not going your way. It seems to like you lose track of what's meaningful to you, and it sends you down in a spiral all of a sudden. And it seems to be like you have there might be like a week or a few months where you have an up, and then like you'll go a few weeks or a few months having like such a low until you can like remind yourself again.
Yeah.
If that makes sense, because you can logically
yeah,
tell
does.
yourself, but it's like you have to also emotionally
You have to feel that. Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah.
For sure.
If that makes sense. It's only because
It definitely
that's
does
been
make
on my
sense.
mind.
Like that has happened to me in my life as well. I'm trying to think like my method, it's a super ineffective method, has always just been let myself slip, and then once eventually I'll want to not slip anymore. And that's how it's always been. Like I'll slip and slip and slide and like I'll fall, right? But I never trip. I might be tumbling, I might be losing my balance, but I never trip. I never fall, right? But I get really fucking close, and to like catch my balance again, to get my feet on the ground and like start working towards my goal again is very difficult. But eventually it always happens. No matter how far I slip, eventually I want to try again. But then also eventually I start tripping again.
And you hit rock bottom again. You go right back to life is meaningless. Like you always do it, like at least I do. Every time like I really spiral, like if I really do, I always go back to what's the point? And then I have to like get myself going. And for me, it's usually through interactions with, individuals. Like it's like they show me who I am. They tell me who I am. And it like reminds me, because sometimes it's hard to remind myself.
Yeah,
and that's what gets me going.
I've really noticed.
I feel like it's
through
almost a
your
dangerous
life.
thing though, is like attaching yourself to that self-identity, and that like that's a self-identity that you're deriving from other people, which is even more dangerous. Like I think just self-identity is potential. This needs more thought, but I think self-identity is potentially a bad thing in general. Any form of self-identity, and there's like the argument like, okay, well, you need to identify with something, otherwise how do you know who you are? Why do you need to define yourself in any way at all? Why can't you just be you? Why can't you just exist? And like I don't know why. Like why do we need to define ourselves in any way other than just to make it easier for other people to categorize or make assumptions about us?
That makes sense.
Or to
for the
relate.
government, like male and female, it's very easy for categorizing and categorizing and
It's a pretty
figuring out stats and stuff like that. It's effective for certain things, but I think it's so toxic to one's mental health, just self-identity in general.
That makes sense. I guess how I go about it is I'm very emotional. Like however anyone's feeling, like if they're in the room and they haven't even discussed it yet to me, like I can feel it immediately.
You're an empath.
Very much. And so it's like if everyone's doing well, the funny thing about me is I also want to help people. So it's not that I'm upset that everyone's doing well, but it's like all of a sudden I lack my meaning. It's like I need to be helping people, and it's like as soon as everything around me is like going down, like the world is crumbling, that's when I actually
feel like you can step
feel
up.
like I stand out the most and I have the most meaning. But that again is like what I found out about myself, and is what I enjoy, because it's really hard for me to be determined to do something. Like, I mean, technically helping people, it's for me, it makes me feel good, but like individually just for myself, sometimes or what I think is just for me, you know, like going to school, I have to like remind myself I'm going to school because I want to become a therapist to help people, instead of I'm going to school to learn a lot, when, you know,
to make money, or
it's like
The more indirect that your actions are to what you feel your deepest meaning is, the harder it is to stay motivated in it, right?
yes, exactly.
And one thing that you were talking about earlier, or both of you kind of were talking about, was how you try to go after this meaning goal, and you guys will, you know, slip and slide and kind of fall, but you'll always come back around to it. And, you know, just growing up with you, Kaden,
So
like,
I guess real quick, let me say, by meaning and goal, like, it's never been a consistent meaning or goal, and like I've never worked my way back to a meaning or goal. It's just to being willing to try in life. Like, that's what I'm able to work myself back towards. Like, I slip and slide into states of not giving a fuck and not trying about anything. Like, I'll shower I'll shower every other day, or like every couple days instead of every, like, twice a day, or like everything starts slipping, you know? And so I don't know, like, I won't take care of my, like, every aspect of me just doesn't try. I don't feel like trying at all. And so that's kind of what returns, is that desire to try again. And it's just because I think I'm the type of person, or not the type of person, but I'm personally, like, once I go to bed at night, I'll never be happy if I don't accomplish anything, if I don't do anything with my life. Like, if I just play video games all day, I'm not going to be happy when I go to bed at night. I'm not going to be happy when I don't have that distraction. Like, when I don't have something distracting me and giving me like a quick dopamine fix, I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to be content with who I am. And so because of that, I need like, that's what I think re-inspires me to try, is hitting rock bottom and realizing, yeah, I don't care about money, yeah, I don't care about success, but doing nothing with my life will not make, like, is going to lead to misery.
Yeah, and kind of back to
where I interrupted you.
Like, you're all good. Like, the idea that I had with Kaden was, like, I can see, like, in his life, he's kind of gone through similar things where he will, you know, get down and kind of lose track of his meaning, and whenever he comes back around to going after his goal, he's always coming back like twice as strong.
Well, thank you. I take that as a compliment.
It wasn't meant that way.
Well, I appreciate it anyway.
It was a dig.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a dig, dude.
It makes me feel like I'm, you know, actually reaching what I find, you know, meaningful. I am curious if your guys' like meaning has changed throughout life.
For sure.
You know.
Yeah.
And in what ways?
Yeah, for a while, my meaning, like, when I first kind of started getting on board with subjective meaning, for a while I really had it as, I think, family, and kind of,
like,
as I
providing
progressed,
or like emotionally being there.
kind of just
A little both.
Yeah, like everything that has to do with family in general, like making sure that, to the very core of it, I think, was just improving the well-being of my family as much as possible. It's definitely
I hope
changed
you
from
recognize
that.
that that's selfish.
It's pretty selfish, yeah.
Okay.
And
As long as you're aware.
yeah, and so that was my meaning for a while, and it did make me feel pretty good, but after some more thought, I feel like I've changed up my meaning quite a bit, to where I'm not sure. I know that I've had different meanings between then and now. I can't remember all of them, but right now I feel like my largest thing that I feel like I put meaning behind is just acquiring knowledge. And
Do you have a reason for that, or
I don't know why. I just whenever I feel like I'm gaining knowledge on something, it just feels super
That sweet,
meaningful.
sweet orgasm when your mind expands.
Oh yeah, dude.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I know that, like, originally when I got into philosophy, we already talked that me and you used to have like this conflict of, like, we all, like, growing up together, you know, we were pretty much like brothers. Like, we always wanted to be better than each other. So, like, one of the reasons I got into it was because I was like, I came to you with like Buddhism, and I was like, Colton, check this out. And then you were already getting into philosophy, so you learned some of the dialogue and the, you know, how to argue, and you shut me down. I was like so pissed. It's
Which
like,
I feel terrible about.
No.
I really don't mean to shut people down when they're talking philosophy, no matter what it is. Like I feel like, well, there's certain
maybe
things that are
some,
so abhorrent that like I will probably shut. Like I just don't want to have that conversation. But
you were new getting into it. You were
Yeah.
excited too.
And young, just like
Yeah,
yeah,
you know, and
I think perhaps I just pushed my ideas harder than I meant to at the time, just because I was excited about them.
yeah, and we've already talked about it so much, and like I wouldn't talk about it if I was upset, and I usually don't hold hard feelings towards people because I like can see where they're coming from, and if anything, I'm grateful for it because I wouldn't be where I'm at now. But it's it's the reason why I got into it and wanted to learn more was because of that. And once in a while, I'll find myself like I'll talk to someone, and I will find myself feeling emotionally attached. You know,
Yeah.
I'm still listening and taking in what they say, but it's to a point where it's like I don't agree with what they're saying, but I don't know enough. You know, and I need to figure this out so I can come back to them and try to. You know, part of me probably wants to put them down sometimes, and I have to watch that. But the other part of me actually wants to have the discussion.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, is it like like working out for me? I love to work out. You know, I look at other guys in the gym. You know, there's other benefits from working out, but it is one of them. You know, to try to
look at other
be
guys in
better
the
on
gym.
check them out, dude. Those big pecs.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
you phrased that, I was like,
anyway, I just like I want to go deep into these, and you know, if that makes sense.
yeah.
I'm not gonna say deep either, but
Oh yeah, go deep.
Going deep at the gym,
Yeah.
looking at other guys. Yeah,
My favorite part about the gym is the other guys and going deep.
dude.
Yeah. I'd say I've honestly never really had a meaning to life, and even now, like I recognize like my meaning to life isn't a super set in stone or like founded or grounded like meaning, and it's just something that I've recently come around to that idea of I think I'd feel good about myself if I accomplished this. But like I'd say all growing up I had no meaning or purpose to life. Like I had different I barely had any dreams as far as like I pretty much never had any goals. Like I would have dreams as far as like, oh, I want to be an FBI agent or I want to be a football player, but I never had any actual goals. Like I just never really cared about anything. And then even before nihilism, like when I was in high school and stuff, I was just too focused on just living. I never really was the type of person to have goals or like care about anything. Like there was no passion in anything I did. Like I would do it for the joy of it, but then that joy would always fade after a little bit like that. And so once that joy faded, I just stopped doing it. And so I never had anything that I was super passionate about. I never had any meaning to life or like, I don't know. I just kind of was always just existing. I was never striving for a higher purpose or anything like that. And then, so especially when I learned about nihilism and became fairly nihilistic, like I had zero meaning to life. And so I don't know. I feel like throughout life, I've never really had a meaning to life. It's just,
Yeah, and what you're describing almost sounds like I feel like phases that I think a lot of people go through. I feel like I went through a phase like that. And I'm not saying a phase like to like put down the experience. Like I'm just saying a phase is in like a section of your life where I don't know how to describe it better other than living as an automaton, I think is the right word.
what is that?
Where you're essentially just like a robot
Okay.
doing what you're supposed to do.
it wasn't even
Living
that. It
your
was
life.
like, I was just so, like my thoughts were just so, I was so, I guess, anxious about the world. Like I would just overthink everything about the world. Like I would just be thinking about, I don't know, high school shit, and like just my thoughts would be completely involved in that regards, not living like robotically, because I've definitely been in those states, and like days are just passing, you're not even kind of aware of what's going on, or I don't know, you're just out of it. But I mean more specifically, like I was just, I don't know, all my thoughts were just around high school shit, or like thinking about girls or sports or friends, or like am I good enough, or am I cool, or am I good looking? Like all these normal, like basic insecure thoughts, I guess, or yeah, insecure because I cared about other people and other people's judgments and all that too much.
I'm gonna kind of make an assumption about you and also tie it in with Colton, but only because I kind of felt this on a lower level, but like growing up in schools, a lot of the kids who were like successful, air quotes, it's were like the very athletic or really good at math, even though that doesn't gauge intelligence, and so it's like people were finding things that were relevant with what they were good at, and whatever they were good at they also really enjoyed doing. And I also saw how there's kids who whatever they were good at what isn't something that was ever able to be watched by society or really helpful when we were younger. And it seems like those kids also had a struggle with meaning. Colton's talking about how knowledge now, especially philosophy, was like meaning, but then like it would almost be deemed
uncool.
Yeah. Or like
not useful.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I feel like that's totally true. Like these are maybe the reason my passion took so long to find. Like a lot of kids will find their passion in these various activities that you were listing, like math or sports or something. But those are activities that are presented to us in middle school and high school. We have the opportunity to explore them and try them out, where psychology and philosophy are not discussed one bit in high school or in middle school or anything. And so you never have the chance to discover them and see if you like them. And so once we finally went on our own intellectual journey, we discovered these things, and that's where we found our passion. So maybe that's just why it took so long to find the meaning.
And I think
meaning
one
to life.
thing also is kind of Maslow's hierarchy, where all three of us, I think, had very, very privileged upbringings, where we had a very nice life, where we had very dependable like food, water, shelter, as well as like human interaction. And then the other things that build towards like the top of Maslow's hierarchy of self-actualization. I don't want to say that we've all self-actualized, but I feel like we're all in a position where a lot of these worries that a lot of people have aren't applicable, so we're not having to worry about them. So then it allows us to think about other things like what
like free will.
Yeah, like free
things
will.
And people like Kiana will say, I do not care about this. Why would I care about it?
Yeah, like
there's benefits from it though.
For sure. And yeah, and I'm not saying this to like say that, getting near the top of the hierarchy is a bad thing. Just that I think that's kind of what has led us to this, where we're at, of thinking of these things of what we ought to do rather than like what we ought to do now that we have surpassed what we ought to do to survive. Because I feel like we're all surviving pretty well. Like we're not having.
I've heard that phrase a lot. Is like we've been granted the maybe intellectual freedom, I think is maybe the correct phrase, but like we're just granted the freedom to think about these things that no one else can think about because they're too focused on just trying to survive. They're too focused on the basic needs being met be able to think about these things, whereas we're granted that freedom, that ability to, since our basic needs are met for, since we don't have to worry about surviving really, we can think about these things.
Yeah, and I'd love to see more people get to the point where they don't have to worry about everyday things, and they can think about this stuff more often of what we ought to do beyond just surviving. Like now, it's really weird to me that there's people like us who are thinking about like what we ought to do now that we've like done everything we need to survive, and we kind of have it just on an autopilot essentially, where we don't really have to think about it intensely, what we have to do to survive, and we can now think of what we ought to do while doing recreational things. And it's super strange to me that there's people in our position, and then there's also people in the position of having to worry about whether or not they're going to get enough water
Yeah.
or food or shelter.
Yeah, I think that's a
And-
good thing to keep in mind. Just
Yeah.
like helps humble you, I guess, and it makes you more appreciative. But I think crap.
Have you
I
guys
lost what I was gonna say.
Have you guys read that book, Crime and Punishment? We talked about that one
Oh,
time.
I have it upstairs. I haven't
You
read
have?
it yet.
I'm not gonna pull anything really from it
Was it
besides
Fyodor Dostoevsky?
Yeah. Now I forgot his name, Dostoevsky or something like
Yeah.
that. Anyway, he the time he wrote the book, this kind of is just an example, but he really captured poverty in a really profound way, and it's almost like unbelievable that things used to be that way. And the main character is a thinker, you know, like pretty much the only thinker of his time, and he is living so poorly, and he eats like maybe a bowl of soup once a week or a piece of bread once a week because he's not out there trying to make money.
Yeah.
How he tries to make money, and I mean, I'm gonna spoil it, but it's not too much of a spoiler because it's what the book is about. But he ends up trying to kill a lady who has a ton of money so he can give it to a lot of people. So he's trying to use his brain, you know, or his knowledge to provide for himself and other people in a more efficient way, which ends up giving him a psychological downfall, which ends up actually hindering his relationships with other people, which cause them to suffer too. So anyway, so it's kind of interesting that they captured that so well in that book.
Yeah,
It's kind of
I
profound.
definitely have to read that book.
Yeah.
I have a couple of books of his upstairs that I need to read.
Oh, he's such an excellent writer.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, right now I'm reading Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
I have that. I have not read that one.
Yeah,
that
I've
one,
heard
but
great things about that book, and just I've heard like it's kind of a must read. Like
that's what I heard too. I just haven't gotten around to it because it's like there's so many must read books.
yeah,
It's like
I have so many books I need to read, but like this book is only like it's pretty short, luckily. So
and sometimes it's a toss up between video games and reading.
Oh yeah.
it's always more me to like just read.
Dopamine fix or knowledge? What one are you gonna
Exactly.
take?
Now we're just scrolling through Facebook. Even.
Dude, TikTok.
I hate looking at Facebook and being like, oh, this is like politically relevant or philosophically relevant, and then like, it's always like, I don't know, whenever I see something like that on Facebook that like I feel like is philosophical in any sense, I almost get frustrated because I always feel like I end up closing out of it, just sitting there and thinking about it for a little bit, be like, okay, this is just like the dumbest like philosophical like or non-philosophical thing that I'm just like trying to shoehorn into being philosophical. I feel like I do that with a lot of things where I try to where I overanalyze perhaps, or I'm not sure the right term, but
I mean, I think
No, that
that's
sounds
probably
right.
the best term. Yeah, I definitely do that as well. Like, I'll psychoanalyze or overanalyze,
Yeah.
hyperanalyze the crap out of situations which should not be so. And, but I think that's probably a good. Like, I don't know. I like that. I feel like I have
It is fun.
a different, unique perspective that like most people won't have
Yeah.
on situations.
I mean, I know that kind of goes against our topic, but it's kind of interesting. Do you guys ever get stuck in that mindset? You know, where after a while, like maybe a few days of just like constant analyzing, you're just like, why can't I just act? Like,
Yeah.
like all of a
yeah.
sudden you lose the you're not able to just act and be authentic all of a sudden.
That was something that, like, it took over my being, I guess. When I was going through a bad time, like, I could not get over acting how I'm supposed to act, and like constantly overthinking about how I'm supposed to act, how I'm supposed to respond to people, how I'm supposed to how I'm supposed to socialize, and the proper way to do things that I couldn't actually just be. Like, I was so in my head obsessed with the proper way to do things that I couldn't exist. And like, it just drove me literally insane. Like, I was just, and that's still something I have an issue with, is just being so caught up in my head and analyzing things. And I mean, yeah, just analyzing them rather than just being in the moment and appreciating them. And I recall writing in my journal something along the lines of, rather than act how you're supposed to, just be you. And like, I don't know, like that was just something that was a reoccurring issue with me back then, was trying to find that balance between being myself and still being accepted by culture, being accepted by people. And now luckily I feel like I'm able to express myself and still be accepted by people. And I guess I've just been reaffirmed, that belief has been reaffirmed by, for instance, you guys not finding me annoying, but okay.
And I feel like the idea that we're all kind of hitting on right now is, I think it might have been from an economics book that I read, like the exact phrase of paralysis by analysis, where
we're
Yes.
always talking about.
yeah, and I
There's
feel like
a-
we always bring it up.
There's
I'm
a
sure
Nietzsche
it's
idea or quote that I really like that goes along with that.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like I just see it all the time. I feel like paralysis by analysis is, at least for me, and like I feel like I see it sometimes with you guys and like other people who are somewhat like-minded. A lot of paralysis by analysis.
The way Nietzsche phrased it was, one of the downsides of being intelligent is you're aware of so many possibilities that it makes you awkward in acting.
Yeah.
Like you're unsure of how to act because you're aware of so many different possibilities. It kind of ties back into Mr. Nobody.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
movie, by the way, if you guys have never seen it.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, but it basically discusses the butterfly effect, and it points out a huge irony in the desire to go back in time and change what you did. It points out the fact that when you don't know what like the outcomes are, you can't choose because you're like, how the fuck do I know what to choose? What is the best path? Like, what is going to lead to the best life? But let's say you are aware of all the possibilities, every single one. How could you possibly choose which one's the best one? Because all of them are going to have their good and bad. Some of them are going to be better or worse. But when there's an infinite amount of possible outcomes, how could you ever choose? And so it just kind of like, it makes you think like you shouldn't have regrets because you realize you just have to live with your choices. Like you can't go back in time and be aware of different possibilities, different potential outcomes, and make a different choice. Like, and who's to say that even if you went back in time and made a different choice, that would lead to a better life? Like, let's say, do I ask this girl out, or do I keep this relationship going? And your answer is yes. Well, then that's or okay. Let's say your answer is no, and then like a year later you regret it. You're like, fuck. What if I had stayed with this girl? What if I had like my life is so miserable right now. I'm so lonely. I have no one in my life. What if I just kept this one person that I cared so much about? Well, what if you had stayed with them, then one day you would have gone driving with them to McDonald's or something, and then you get in a car accident and you die. Like, who's to say that would have been, that if you did go back in time and make a different choice, that actually would have been the best choice?
Or even preferable.
Yeah, preferable choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a lack of integrating your emotions too, though.
Can you expand?
You know, like if you sit there just constantly trying to logically think of something, or the answer of an outcome, sometimes it's, you know, do I want to ask this girl out? You're trying to figure it out because there's an emotional tie in there. If you really feel like this urge, like there's something about you, like a chemical, you know, connection there somehow, you know, maybe you shouldn't just only think of the emotions, because there's also certain people that only run with their emotions, but maybe you should somehow integrate both of them, because it's the only thing that makes us different from animals, is that, I mean, they have emotions too, it's some way, like, you know, fear,
Not
but it's like
as complex.
Yeah, we have rationality.
But I mean,
and
would
these
that still
complex
not
emotions.
be logically based and not emotionally based? And you're just you're using your intellect to make proper decisions in regards to your emotions rather than be emotionally influenced or based.
That makes sense. That would be hard, because I mean,
Because I feel like if you did make a decision that is emotionally based, that'd almost be a diluted.
like, Golden, why did you pick Key to marry her? Was it only logic, or did it also have emotions tied
But
into
I think
it?
it's like a logical decision based on what your emotions are. Whereas
Like,
you can be like diluted by your emotions into believing something else, and it's not logically based, versus thinking logically but having your but taking into account your emotions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Kind of like the distinction I feel like I tried to make earlier, where you're factoring your emotions into an equation that's logical rather than allowing the emotion to influence the entire decision.
That makes sense.
Yeah, I think parsing out your, logic and your rational ideas of where you should go and your emotions trying to guide you somewhere. I think you are right that you do need to integrate them in the sense that you're separating them, but putting the pieces together where it'll guide you to make you feel however you want to feel in the future.
Yeah, because you need to be feeling fulfilled. Yeah, I guess it was just being paralyzed by analyzing would be the lack of having or considering your emotional feel. Does that make sense?
I can see that, and I think there's a lot of different factors that can contribute to the paralysis of analysis. I think emotion can be one. I think
but also the anxiety is there too, so you do have your emotions
That
in
was
there.
something that like really troubled me. Was I remember having this thought like, is it not better just to make mistakes and live with the consequences than to live with the constant anxiety about making the mistake? Because for me, that anxiety was hell. Like, it was just what filled my mind. It was just constant anxiety about right and wrong, what to do, what was the proper way of acting, what was the proper way of thinking and being and interacting with people.
sounds like suffering.
It was it was fucking miserable. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. That but there was another book that Dostoevsky wrote called The Underground Man.
Yeah.
Did I mean, I'll explain anyway.
I've heard Jordan Peterson discuss those.
Oh, he's saying exactly what you guys are kind of talking about. This character in The Underground Man, he starts off kind of just describing how he uses the word stupid, how everyone else is stupid because they're not sitting there thinking. Like he calls himself a thinker and is smart, and everyone else is just acting, and he calls that stupid. The entire book, the guy is miserable.
Yeah.
He's just absolutely miserable, and he's watching all these people and he's getting angry and he wants to just act, but every situation he's in, he's overthinking, and everyone's just making fun of him. They're having fun being authentic. He's just miserable.
One thing I read, or I think I read, somehow saw a couple years ago that really influenced how I think. And it was the idea that, say you see two furries having fun, like they're playing with each other, and you're judging the fuck out of them. How stupid are you for being miserable over someone else having fun? Like, you're watching other people enjoy themselves, and you're being miserable over them enjoying themselves. So who's really the idiot? Like, yeah, you might think that they're stupid for them being furries or whatever, but they're having fun, they're enjoying life, and here you are being miserable, judging them enjoying life. So who's really the stupid one?
That's true.
Like, who's really the fool? Yeah.
Yeah, and there's, when you really think about it, that nobody really finds meaning in judging people. Like, nobody feels fulfilled after judging people.
Which it's a projection of insecurity.
Yeah, perhaps, and
I think always.
There's perhaps people who find meaning in drama or whatever it is, but
or I guess maybe not always, because it would also be there could be judgment based upon, lack of a better term, segregation. I can't think of a better word, but religion,
social norms.
like between religions. Like, if you're not this religion, we'll judge you. If you're not a part of this, like with Mormon people specifically, feels like there's a lot of judgment towards non-Mormon people.
Yeah, like in groups and out group.
Yeah, so segregation probably isn't the right word, but
yeah, just the in group and out group. Yeah, and the judgment between it.
But there's got to be a difference, because obviously we judge everyone we come across. It's like harsh judgment. It's like you're always comparing yourself to everyone to figure out what's going on, who are you.
But I think that's a bad thing. I think that's a part of who we've become, just constant judging. But I think that judging and equating yourself and seeing how you comparing yourself to other people is never going to in any way equate to any form of happiness in the long run.
I can see
I think it will only lead to more pain and misery than happiness it provides.
For sure. And I can see it kind of as perhaps a evolutionary explanation of why we're judging perhaps people so much, as we see with social psychology, and we're judging others to figure out how we need to act. And this is a survival tool that humans have
and also
come up with.
A degree of it is not just judging or comparing, but also analyzing other people, and in that way ensuring that they are safe to be around, and we can be safe around them, because it's such a natural, I feel like it's innate in all of us to have some type of suspicion or distrust towards everyone, and like just be on our guard. Like, could this person kill me? Like, just, I don't know, on guard, basically, ready for whatever shit situation or shitty person may enter our life.
But even with meaning, I don't even think like meaning is always happiness, you know?
Oh, definitely not.
Oh yeah.
And so like, even though judgment doesn't lead to happiness, like what about that top dog who's always judging people, but he feels good because everyone's beneath him? He's judging, and it's actually
So I don't think
useful.
that person will ever actually feel happy with themselves. They'll feel happy on a superficial level, on a diluted level, on a very shallow level. But as soon as they're actually like by themselves, once they're have no one but their own thoughts with them, once they don't have a comparison to, like, they don't have another person there to make themselves feel better about themselves, they're gonna feel shit about themselves.
That makes sense.
Because they only derive their happiness from that comparison and from putting other people down. I think that is such an indicator of low self-esteem and low self-confidence. Judging and putting other people down indicates some type of flaw in oneself.
Yeah.
How do you get rid of that? Like, because I know even when I play a chess game, I lose, and I immediately feel beneath the player who just beat me, and I can tell that I feel down on myself.
I mean, I think just perspective, exactly what perspective or what perspectives you need to quote unquote acquire for that to no longer be an issue. I'm not exactly sure, but I think one would be an understanding that knowledge is acquired, and since there's no free will, it's in some way ties in. You're not really, like, you don't get to choose which knowledge you acquire explicitly, and so someone else is going to have more knowledge in a different field than you do. And so they have just spent more time in that field than you have, whereas you have all this different knowledge that they don't have in different areas. And so you can't really feel all that bad just because someone has spent more time or more practice in this one area, and then therefore they're better than you at it, whereas you have a wide range of skills or knowledge or attributes. So maybe that could be some form of solace, not completely, but
That makes sense.
And I think that there's a pretty big evolutionary factor in a lot of this. I don't know why today, but I feel like a lot of this stuff I'm relating to like evolutionary explanations.
I've theorized, and I'm not sure where I stand on this, but I've theorized that every single thing inside us, every emotion we feel, every single thing has an evolutionary purpose. I'm not sure 100%. This idea used to be a reoccurring thought in my head, and there's one or two things I had thought of where I was like, what the fuck could this potentially have had an evolutionary purpose? But like schizophrenia, or schizophrenia, that's a bad example. I've actually heard reasons why that may have been genetically passed down, like why it's been a part of our species and why it hasn't been what is the word, decontaminated, whatever the word is. And basically that is the people who are schizophrenic or prone to schizophrenia, those are the people who are really growing and pushing forward, I guess, our views, our beliefs, our ideals about the world, our world views. They're the ones who are having those creative and unique perspectives. For instance, people say Carl Jung was schizophrenic. Nietzsche went insane. Like, all these different philosophers and great thinkers all had their different mental issues. And so people are theorizing that, or I've heard a theory that those type of mental illnesses were necessary in like kind of really the expansion of human consciousness and really getting our intelligence going. But as far as like Down syndrome, I'm not sure how that would.
Yeah, I think that there's, what is it? I could definitely be wrong on this. Like, this is just stuff that I'm fairly certain that I've heard before, which is
maybe that was a bad example.
A lot of just randomness. So like a lot of our emotions have to do, like, can evolutionarily be explained as trying to get us to cooperate and be social beings or a social species that help each other survive. And that's really the human strength, is how social we are. And along with that, there's a lot of just random mutations that come up from the evolution that, there may be random emotions or like physical traits of people that just don't really have any evolutionary.
Part of the natural selection process is things arising and then certain things being not selected. And so, of course, if we're still undergoing evolution, which we are, I think, then there are going to be things that are going to be developed and then hopefully eventually not passed down, or like not in humans anymore.
Yeah, and yeah, I think the evolutionary explanations for a lot of our actions or feelings are pretty interesting.
Like anxiety, or
Yeah.
interesting and accurate. I think they are. I think they are true, and they make sense. Like why we have anxiety. It was a necessity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, being anxious about like impending danger.
the more
is
anxious you
good.
were, the more likely you were to survive back in the day. Like if you had high anxiety, you're probably gonna survive.
Yeah, until you get to the point of having like
No.
panic attacks.
Okay, yeah, true.
Yeah, but like being somewhat anxious probably was a good feeling to have when you were like fighting off saber-toothed tigers and
Exactly,
mammoths
when
up in the Ice Age.
Some like predator could just jump on your back at any second. Like you want to be hyper aware and super anxious, and like just your ears open, and like any sound of a crunch of a leaf in the like 200 feet away, you're like, oh shit, what was that?
Yeah.
I actually heard someone kind of drive this topic. I mean, I don't know. It's not extremely sound, but he was tying, way back in the day when there was a bush and it was rustling. If someone didn't have high anxiety and he just thought, oh, it's probably nothing, and if it was something, he got eaten.
Yeah.
If someone was anxious and it was nothing, he was fine. But if it was something, he was also fine because he got out of it.
The more anxious person was more likely to
Yeah,
survive.
but then the guy ended up tying it into religion and was saying like those people pick up, like schizophrenic people, they pick up patterns more than normal people do. Anyway, so he was saying that people who are anxious like that, and they're actually like pattern seekers, and they pick up patterns easier than other people do. And so he said that could have been why people started picking up patterns in like there being a God and religion. I felt like that was a far reach, but I could see it, but
And
There was definitely like, I'm totally on board with the idea that religion definitely helped bring the species out of the Dark Ages to some extent.
It totally allowed moral progress.
It was very
important.
unity.
Yeah.
We can't deny the importance.
Especially if you look at it in the light that like, what if all of it was false, and what if it wasn't malintent, like it wasn't some guy trying to start a cult? Like, what if it just was these figureheads trying to think of what is best for the community and what is best for our society? What rules can we make to make us as successful as possible? And I feel like they did a pretty good job. Like,
getting us as far as they did. I think maybe all the way up till like the turning point of the 18th or the 1800s to the 1900s.
was that one?
I think.
Or when was the Renaissance? Was that the 1400s?
I'm not sure. I'm terrible with Renaissance history.
Well, it was probably also our intelligence coming up. We had to create stories of why there was lightning because we had no idea. We didn't have
science.
Yeah.
The scientific method, I think, was a huge turning point. Like that,
because we need to label things, like we're that's like in our nature to figure out what things are and ask the question why, which can be frustrating.
Yeah, we're just curious.
Which is why we have this podcast right now.
Yeah. Yeah, we're curious beings trying to figure out. In the past, evolutionarily, probably like curious to find out what's safe or not. Mm-hmm. Now we're curious about, going back to Maslow's hierarchy. We're curious rather than on what we ought to do to survive. We're now curious on what we ought to do in more recreational things or more wide lens or more broad overview of life, what we ought to do.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of Maslow, he was I think I told you about this when we had like a little Discord chat. I don't know, but I was curious if you heard anything about Maslow in your psychology courses.
I haven't learned about him yet. I'm only in intro to psych right now, so
that's what I'm in.
Okay.
They're speeding us up quick, and I don't know why.
So at least at Slick, and at least with the math classes,
Uh-huh.
I signed up for a full semester one, but they shortened all the math classes at least from 16 weeks to 12 weeks
Okay.
because of COVID. So I don't know if they're doing the same thing there.
That it could be. I mean, I have not been up to date with anything. I kind of just they sent out an assignment. And I'm like, I need to get this done. Anyway, I need to read this. But they were talking about, and it could just be the professor who knows like how that actually works. But anyway, they were teaching us about Maslow and his ideas, and that there's actually like some subdivisions of psychology, like what they label themselves. So like there's the behaviorists.
Oh yeah, I
and
didn't
then
realize that
there's-
was Maslow. Okay.
Yeah,
Who came up-
Maslow was
he came up with these?
humanist. No, he
Oh,
just
okay,
fell
okay,
under
okay.
humanist.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the one that I had the hardest time with, because I
Yeah.
didn't know if you understood it, because they were
So-
saying that they believed that the individual would do what's good.
So yeah, from my
And that
understanding
they
is like
stopped there, and I was like, what do they mean by what's
humanistic
good?
psychology is like it's empowering people, and that's its goal. Is
Yeah.
it's to empower the individual and believing that they have free will and that they have power over their life and that they can do whatever they want, they can accomplish whatever they want. And it also preaches altruism and the power of like being kind to other people. And so because of that, like I remember in the psych class, on like the first or second day, we're going over these different fields of psychology, and after we go through all of them, she's like, all right guys, which ones did you like or dislike? And I raised my hand. I was like, I think that humanistic is based on delusion. And I just went in, I was like, okay, 1, free will, doesn't exist. 2, altruism is a myth. Like every action is selfish in its origin. And so because of that, this entire field of psychology is based on delusion. But despite that, I think that they can be so beneficial for some people. I could totally see, especially religious people, I could totally see them being more prone.
My therapist was a humanistic. As I've
Okay.
learned about it, I can look back and actually see what he tied into, because he definitely just gave me the platform and extreme encouragement. He was just in whatever I thought I should do, he was just trying to untangle it so I could do what I actually thought I should do, instead of me going, well, I kind of want to do this, but also if I do this, then it's going to lead to this. And
Yeah.
his whole goal was just, let's figure out what Kaden
Empower
wants
the
to do.
individual. Yeah.
And it made me feel really good. But and the only thing that I could see out of it was I dislike kind of their it's the same with people who start saying like, I'm an atheist, and people immediately start prescribing like, oh, they
Yeah.
are this person, this is who they are,
Or even just like, I am liberal, or
Yeah.
I am Republican. Yeah.
And so I think like
That's
I
why
probably
labels are bad.
shouldn't label him as a humanistic, because like there were certain things he would have like stopped me on, and he was trying to
But they label themselves.
yeah
Like, I'm pretty sure you have to,
yeah
pretty much.
you do, but I don't think that they should put like that the individual is gonna do what is ultimately good, because it wasn't that I did what was ultimately good, it was I did what was eventually best for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna at the end of the day, I'm gonna do what's best for myself anyway. So he just helped me figure out what I was gonna do. Sped up the process and helped me out with that. So that's because I was trying to figure it out. I was very frustrated with it, and I was like, how can so many people even today prescribe to that?
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out how, and because I was able to go through it, it's the only way I could kind of.
I can totally see that field being extremely beneficial for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like people who don't think about these deep philosophical ideas, and I could totally see it being like probably maybe even the most beneficial form of
Psychology.
therapy, or
Therapy. Yeah.
specifically
Dude,
therapy. I still think it's completely based on delusion.
It is.
But I don't know.
Yeah,
My-
like
my
how
therapist-
we were talking earlier about religion. Like all three of us are atheists to a degree, and we tend to not think that religion is a very useful tool overall nowadays. But we all do agree that,
Or more specifically,
day-
a necessary, like not.
definitely not necessary nowadays. But we will all agree that it was a very useful tool, bringing us from like the Dark Ages to a somewhat modern society.
Yeah.
In the same way, the humanistic psychology may not be necessary, but it can be very beneficial to bring people from their internal dark age to a prosperous one.
And wouldn't you, like, if you get into therapy and these things because you enjoy it, and if you're going into therapy not because you want to, like, only to help individuals, why wouldn't you adopt the humanistic? Because that seems to be the most beneficial for that individual, like, by empowering him to the fullest. You know, maybe it's not gonna, like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be, if you're going in there only to self-fulfill yourself, then why wouldn't you just empower as many people?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, like, that I think it's right. I'm just asking a question.
I think that, like, delusions work so long as they're upheld.
Mm-hmm.
And so as long as people can stay under this delusion or whatever, which I think like most people will stay under it their entire lives. Like, most people think that by doing charity you're a better person, and like people who do a ton of charity and like give 20% of their 20% tithing, like, well, they're better people, they got better character, like they're better in God's eyes. Like, I think that view is false, and so if that like,
I think we need to clarify this, because you probably don't think that giving to charity is bad.
Yeah, I don't think
neutral. You probably think giving to charity is good, but
yeah, it's
tithing specifically.
Not even. Well, I think that valuing or viewing someone as better, or a better person or a good person just because they give to charity, I think that is stupid. I think that is not an indicator of their character whatsoever. It's only an indicator of what they've been like. It's not an indicator of their character, because it could say a potential billion things about their character. It could say that they're simply religious and just following religious laws. It could say that by doing charity, they feel better about themselves, or by doing charity, they feel better compared to other people, or like they feel better than other people. Like,
I think it can tell a lot of different things, but I feel like for me, I feel like giving to charity is a moral good, and I would separate charity from tithing. I don't think tithing.
Sure, yeah.
Tithing.
I mean,
might be
thing.
A moral good.
Well, tithing is charity, but charity is not tithing. I think, from my understanding, at least.
Yeah,
tithing is for church.
To the
Is that not
poor.
Considered church or charity though?
Technically, it is. The only issue that I have with it is we don't know how much of the tithing actually goes to those people.
But I mean, when you're giving tithing, if you're religious, would you not support giving money to the church? So would that still not be a charity? Like, so why does it matter how much goes to the church and how much goes to the poor as far as altruism is considered?
So it comes down to, like, whether or not you think that churches are a good institution.
If you're religious, wouldn't you, and you're giving tithing, then wouldn't you most likely already believe that?
Right, but I'm talking about from my perspective. From a religious perspective, for sure, like, giving tithing would be.
But I feel like that's the only perspective that matters, because it's not like you're ever going to give tithing. It's not possible for you to give tithing.
I mean, I can still have
a
perspective on
tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I can still have a perspective on whether, for me, like, tithing is a good or bad thing.
But and, like, since you already hold the perspective, so if you all of a sudden decide I'm going to think that this charity is tithing, then it's not really that perception. It's just you're deluding yourself.
So tithing is a very church specific thing. It's not
right. So that's why I'm saying you can't just randomly rephrase the charity you're going to do tomorrow as tithing if you're already aware of the fact that it's charity and not tithing, because then you just be this is semantics.
I disagree. I think that if you're giving to like a March for Dimes, I think that, you know, you can draw tons of conclusions from that person, and I feel like personally I would say that giving to charity is a good thing. I can say you can draw conclusions about the person, but I don't think you can draw conclusions about the good or bad of their character. Like, you can draw, like, if they donate to an autism charity, you can draw a conclusion that probably someone in their family is autistic. Like, that type of conclusion you can draw, but you can't draw the conclusion that this person is a good person because they give to a charity. Perhaps.
I don't think you can ever, like, no exclusion.
I think
make
you'd
that
have
assumption.
I think you'd have to pretty much say that with any moral action, then, that you can't derive somebody's moral character based on things that
100%.
on actions that they.
I think that's true too. Because any moral action you can take, like you can take a moral action because it is going to benefit you in that moment in achieving an unmoral goal in the long run.
I agree with that, but I do think that we have a fundamental disagreement just on whether we can draw conclusions on the morality of a person based on their actions.
Okay.
Because I think that different actions, you can draw different conclusions about their morality.
Yeah, I guess you can. I think you can derive conclusions about what their moral views are, but I don't think you can say anything about their actual morality or character, because people will have different personas or different personalities in different situations based on a million different things, and with each of those personas, with each of those personalities, you're going to make a different decision. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think you can make an assumption about someone's entire character based off a decision they make based on a certain personality that they're putting on in that moment.
Yeah, and I do agree with that. I think that
I don't think you can ever make an assumption on someone as a whole based off one action. Ever.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree with that. Okay. I think that it's just like a.
So how could you ever say someone is morally good or bad based off one action then?
So it's not necessarily that they're entirely. It's not a binary in my mind. It's more of like, if I see somebody do a moral action, like they go from a neutral, like my assessment of their morality goes from neutral to somewhat good, and the more that I interact with a person,
it's like a scale.
But I feel like
scale.
I feel like you can't even suppose that, because there are an infinite amount of people you're going to know such a surface level amount of, and so to suppose anything about their moral being, I feel like is just ridiculous of you to do, because how could you ever have a proper understanding?
But
of
I'm not
everyone?
presupposing. I'm just like assessing somebody from the actions that I see.
But that's exactly what I'm saying though. Is like you see someone do one good, and so they move up from 0 to +1. Right? Mm-hmm. So now they're at +1 forever. If you never see that person again, forever in your mind, they're at +1. But what if this person's actually the worst person in the world, but you only ever saw them at a +1? I don't think that one action can give you any indication of their moral character or their moral being whatsoever.
For sure. And I'm not trying to do that. I think we're looking at it from like kind of from different levels. Like, I'm looking at it from like a very specific, like my perspective on this person, and like if I'm seeing somebody at a gas station and they drop coins in like the charity cup or whatever, like, or leave an extra tip or whatever, like if I interact with them again, I'm not making an entire assumption that they're a good person, but like
maybe trust and mistrust.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of trust or expectation that I feel like I can there's some expectation of morality that I am expecting from them if I were to come cross paths with them again. Like they could shatter that idea if I saw them do something immoral, but I'm not making an entire assessment of the person.
I guess
I'm just,
my view
it's
on
just
it,
kind of a judgmental thing and like a practical.
I can definitely see that, but I just feel, so my personal opinion on this is, one action is not going to give me enough to trust or distrust anyone. Like, I'm not going to make any.
But it would have to be out of protection if you saw someone steal just once, and even if you had the thought of like they could have been stealing because their family is like really poor and all that. If they all of a sudden the next time you saw them, they're knocking on your door, and they go into your garage and they're all alone, it would be more of a protective instinct to be like, I probably need to watch them.
And that kind of like
if it was
coincides to what we were saying earlier with like judgment and comparing. Yeah. Like there is some necessity to it.
It's like a natural instinct. I don't know if it's morals, but it's definitely like a trust or mistrust kind of gauge that you're trying to put on people. Because if someone...
That part, that is true, but like it's just, once again, you're supposing a generalization about the person that has a purpose. I agree it does have a purpose, a good purpose, that generalization, but I don't think that it's ever going to give you an accurate representation of them, nor do I think that you should feel like you have any sort of representation of their character from that one action.
Yeah.
Like, I think that there, like,
because maybe they would
there
be
are a
then stealing
million
from
different
me
things
for a good reason.
Yeah.
But I still don't want them to steal from me.
or like you see them put the coins in at the gas station or whatever. What if all it is they got some change back and they hate carrying change? They just put it in there instead of the trash can. Like, how does that give you, like, I just don't see how any one action or even any 10 actions can give you an indication of, I mean, obviously it'll give you some indication, but like, I don't know how you can make any type of presupposition about someone's character based off any individual action which you deem as morally good or bad.
Yeah, and I think we're pretty much on agreement, because I think I'm more so explaining just a practical tool than like a full
Definition, like they're not.
Yeah,
bad
I can.
or
No, I do.
good.
I just see. I agree
like
with
a
you.
full assessment of like figuring out the truth of who this person is. Like, it's a practical tool.
Yeah,
to
I
figure out,
agree
like,
with that aspect.
expectations and kind of judging in.
Yeah, because I agree
feel
with
like a
you,
healthy way.
and I agree with you. You guys are both just hitting it from.
Yeah, I think we're like on
Different sides.
slightly different levels of like the perspective on it.
Because I don't think you can label someone as like you're saying as good or as bad just based off of one action
or
that they
make
made.
any moral like presuppositions about their moral
No.
character. Yeah, as a
Like,
whole.
But yeah, I mean, but if like I was saying, like I just with the guy stealing, even though he could be now stealing from or
Yeah.
could possibly steal from me in the garage, it could still be a good reason. Who knows? Or a bad. I don't know. I just don't want him to steal from me. But then again, maybe I would give to him if he came to
Yeah.
me and asked.
Yeah, like if somebody's stealing from you, but then you realize that they're stealing like some small amount of food from you that you wouldn't have even noticed was missing if you hadn't seen it to feed their family.
Yeah,
Like-
exactly. And if I found that out, I probably wouldn't say anything. But if I came home and if it was like my TV and all that, even though it still could be to pawn it off to get money, I would still be a little upset, because maybe it's the only they grew up and it's the only way that they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was still something that I worked hard for, and it would still upset me.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say that they were bad. I would still keep that. I think that's why free will is so or realizing that there's no free will, why it's useful, because you wouldn't hate that person. You'd realize like
Yeah.
it happened for a reason, but you'd still be upset, and because I think that's what anger is. It's something unfair happened to you, and you need to be the judge of it.
And you can recognize that something unfair did happen to you
Mhm.
while still understanding
Exactly.
the other person's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't need to hold a grudge or be angry at them, but you can still understand that you were wronged.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to sidetrack this too much. I think it's really interesting. Okay. I think it's really interesting how, what is it? Oh shoot, I completely lost my train of thought.
That's
What
okay.
were we just talking about?
We were talking about
What was it? The
morals. Oh, whether you can judge someone's moral character off an action or.
and then the people stealing.
Yeah, and free will and how that ties in.
Shoot, I've completely lost it. I feel like I had
Yeah, I have no clue. I honestly forgot where our last idea was.
yeah, I felt like I had somewhere decent to tie it in, but yeah, I do think that we agree on it. It just we were coming at it at different levels.
Yeah.
Because yeah, I totally agree that you can't make a moral assessment of who, like, if somebody's good or bad based on one action.
Dude, I was on Twitter the other day, maybe it was even today, and like people were posting about the debate, and then one of them was like, one of the tweets was, it was just some I forget what it was. It was just a tweet about the debate, and then in the comments, some lady was like, I don't know how Biden put up with Trump. I'm a Christian, and I would have dropped a couple F-bombs. And that just like that frustrated me to like an insane degree. And so I commented, I was like, how is you being Christian an indicator of your character in any way whatsoever? Like that pissed me off. That she was like, I'm a Christian, and I would have dropped an F-bomb. Like, what the fuck are you trying to say? Like, what does you being a Christian have to say about your character at all? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like,
yeah, I think a lot of people feel as though their religion, like I had mentioned earlier, just goes into so many aspects of their life that it is kind of a very identifiable feature or identity, I guess.
Yeah. An almost defining feature. Like, it defines who they are. Like, it's not even something that necessarily, like, yes, also identity, but like, I feel like it's almost, for some people, more than just identifying with it. It's who they are. Like,
yeah, and they try to live up to what at least they think in their head is like their idea of who they should be as a Christian or as a Catholic or whoever.
There's like
yeah, I think that's why people get so emotionally, they come off really upset when you attack them or attack their religion. And like, to us, sometimes it's like, why are you getting so upset about it? And it's because we don't understand that we're attacking them,
Yeah, that's one thing.
I don't know if that's what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, kind of. Like, so, yeah, me and Brock have talked before about how if you identify with beliefs, and I think you and I have talked about this, if you are identifying with your beliefs and become too emotionally attached to them, when people attack those beliefs, people feel personally attacked rather than just like, if I have the idea like 2 + 2 = 5 and you're of the opinion 2 + 2 = 4, like, and I feel like however I've come to that conclusion is like a very personal decision that I've come up with based on who I am, and it's my identity to be involved with 2 + 2 = 5. Like, I'm gonna be very hurt if you start coming at me with 2 + 2 = 4. Like, so I do think that there's quite a bit of danger in identifying yourself. Me and Brock actually, I think, touched on this topic quite a bit on the first episode of the dangers of identifying with things, and I think it's a very prevalent topic in almost any philosophical discussion. Like, identity and personal identity is a huge thing in how people go about operating in the world and thinking about philosophy and morality, and their openness to changing their ideas or even having the conversation.
That makes sense.
Yeah, you should read D.W. Winnicott.
Who's that?
Psychologist.
Okay.
He was very focused on like the family and developmental psychology. But I shared this quote last time, so I hate re-saying it again. But I'm gonna say it again because you're here. But I really like it, and it's to do with kind of self-identity, and it's. Let me actually look on my phone so that way I can get it right this time. JK, my phone's still broken.
Oh wait. Even though it's like by identifying with ourselves, isn't it? If everyone individually does that, it's still like our thoughts are still a collective of our culture. Like my family, and
the
then
collective unconscious.
It keeps growing. It's gonna be my family, my state, my country. And
all of these.
How do you get out of that? Like it's so many in groups, but it almost seems like we have to have these in groups so we can figure out. But we don't have to have these in groups.
Yeah.
But how do you get out of?
I think it's largely education.
Yeah.
Like educating people on the dangers of it, and a lot of the complications that come up identifying with things too much. And I'm sure there's possibly some like identifiers that are harmless, but I almost think it as a general concept.
What would be one that would be harmless? I'm just curious if I would agree.
perhaps like a, I don't know, like a healthy activity like hiking, like if you identify as a hiker. I think perhaps there could be some healthy consequences.
I'm probably. Will you guys explain how it's a negative? You guys may have did this on the last podcast, but I didn't listen to it. But
How identity in general is a negative.
yeah,
I can see it even with the hiking example. There's a possible negativity of you identify as a hiker, and maybe you see like mountain bikers on your hiking trails, and you're like, this is for hikers, and people are like, well, it's not just for
Cause
hikers.
separation and viewing people as in or out as
makes
different.
sense.
I also think that. So I'm gonna think of more specifically with like. So okay, let me read the quote first, and then. So the most aggressive and therefore most dangerous words in the languages of the world are to be found in the assertion "I am." And so, correlating with that, I think "I am" statements, even like "I am a socially anxious person," or "I am the type of person who likes to stay inside," or "I am the type of person who doesn't talk to girls," or "I am the type of person who's confident." Like if you believe these "I am" statements, they become who you are. You become that. Like you are that.
Role.
Exactly. You play that role, and once you play that role enough, it does become who you are for the most part. Unless it's just super counter to who you are and it doesn't coincide. But so yeah, once you have those "I am" statements, those "I am" statements are self-identifying as something, and so you can get stuck self-identifying with a particular thing. And I think this applies to mental illnesses as well. Obviously there's some like Down syndrome or severe autism. I'm not including those, but like social anxiety or depression or I don't know, all these mental illnesses that are developed or formed. I think once you identify with them, you can kind of excuse your thoughts and actions in that kind of like coincide with that mental illness, if that makes sense. Like if you're socially anxious, you might excuse not going out. You might excuse like not trying to talk to people because you're like, oh, I'm just socially anxious. That's just who I am. Like I'm just not the type of person who goes out and makes friends. I'm not the type of person who goes on adventures. That's just not me. But if you don't identify with that, then you might be able to recognize that by pushing yourself to do these things of which you think you are not capable of doing, that's how you realize you are capable of doing it. And then you're no longer a socially anxious person because you went out and actually did the thing that you thought or that you were afraid of, and you realize that there's no reason to be afraid of it. Like you overcame your fear, and so now you're no longer a socially anxious person. You no longer have that identity. Whereas if you're constantly attached to that identity, that definition of who you are, then you're going to be kind of unable to leave that identity, but also that identity will become who you are. Even if just a minuscule amount, I think identifying with something will influence you to become that way even more so.
Yeah, and I think this idea might be entirely vapid, but
can I add on real quick?
Oh yeah.
And just like a final thing I'm just thinking of is also, then you're just constantly on a search to define who you are. And are you ever going to be able to define who you are? I'm of the opinion no, because I think each person is so much more complex and also so varying in emotion and thought and action that you can't really define who you are, because this is a Jungian idea, but everyone has multiple personas, and your persona, your personality, your character, who you are in that moment is so different when you're hungry, when you're tired, when someone just broke up with you, when you're in a fight with someone. Each of those personas, each of those personalities has a different way of, like, it's so different than another that you can't really even say who you are. You can't even define yourself. Like, and to try and define yourself is, you're just going to be on a constant quest trying to define yourself. Like, who am I? And then you're going to be looking for other people to define who you are, because you're never going to be able to define who you are yourself without other people, I don't think.
Isn't that the point though? Like that's what almost gives us some of that meaning, is to constantly be working through this. Like I don't think we'll ever figure it out, but always trying to figure out who we are or why we're here, or like, who am I? It's almost like even though I see the benefits of getting rid of the in or out group, it's like a lot of that is such an important part of the game that we're all playing, that
Yeah.
provides some of that meaning.
I do think it's an important part of the game for sure, but
So-
I don't think it's an important part of life. Like I don't
No,
think it'll
yeah.
ever
Yeah.
produce happiness. Like step outside of our Western culture, where this game is like where with the game the ego is so important, and like just an egocentric lifestyle and persona is beneficial, and almost a psychopathic I guess worldview can be beneficial, especially if you're in business and stuff.
I think one thing that kind of tied together, I was thinking it may be a vapid comment, but I think that like accepting who you are or things about perhaps even just like your physicality or your physical being, but not identifying yourself with them is a healthy
True.
way to move forward. Like how
Yeah.
you were talking about mental health, like it's good to recognize and accept that perhaps you have like
I think that was like a really good thing to hit
detriments.
on.
Yeah. You may have things in your life that you feel like hold you back or, you know, are limiting in some way.
Though you don't
But-
want to identify with them, recognize them.
Yeah, recognize them. And
That was good.
And I think it perhaps may allow you to overcome some challenges. And I don't think it's always necessary for everybody to overcome everything that is a limiting factor for them. But I think it's a worthwhile pursuit to.
When you say accepting who you are, like what do you mean by that? Like, do you mean like if I
Or not accept more. I think recognizing is probably a better term.
I think
that's probably the best.
recognizing. I think accepting or recognizing can be either way a good way to say it, because you're not allowing it to justify things. You're seeing it for what it is, where it's a limit. Things may be a limit or a distraction that you can't help, like an affliction, and you don't want to. As soon as you identify with it rather than recognize it, you are going from seeing these limits and trying to overcome them to identifying with them and
Almost
allowing
accepting.
them to justify a lack of progress.
Yeah. I think that was a really good way of phrasing it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the only issue I have with the downfall of self-identifying is it won't bring you happiness, because I already.
Okay, but what is happiness? Because I think it will bring you contentment.
Yeah, I don't think happiness is something you should ever try to strive for.
Yeah.
So that's why I think like
Okay.
saying that.
I thought you were. Yeah. I assumed you meant that as like a negative thing.
No,
Okay.
I just don't think that should ever be like something you should strive for ever, because I don't think it's something.
It's just a feeling.
Yeah.
It comes and goes.
I have
Yeah.
no idea when I'm gonna be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I can kind of like tie certain things to like, oh, this made me happy in the past, maybe.
But you were
Well,
saying
again, but-
self-identifying may
Yeah.
not help with finding happiness.
I see how it's not as valuable as, but I don't think we should say that it's we shouldn't do it because it won't provide happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's also I'm not gonna do a ton of things because it's gonna provide happiness. I don't know, because then I'm always in hopes that it will. I'm always hoping it will when I do certain things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just feel like self-identity, it's not going to help with achieving or finding pleasure in general. Not even specific. Like all quote unquote good feelings I would lump under pleasure, and so I think they're like happiness is one of those
Yeah,
things.
that's true.
And all we are pleasure-seeking creatures, and so because of that, if not self-identifying will bring more overall pleasure, I think then therefore it's a
Then
good
we can
thing.
say-
Subjectively, if our goal is human pleasure or like
Yeah.
human,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think there's kind of different levels that we can look at it through. Where I think on a surface level glance, you can say like these in groups fitting in brings us however much pleasure, right? Like whenever, I'm sure you guys have felt this before, where you start gaining a new friend group that you really wished you were in, or whatever else, something similar to this situation, and like the feeling of fitting in to this in group and identifying with them is pretty pleasurable. However, comparing it to the idea of being able to cooperate with whoever, like
that, and also discovering one's true self, quote unquote. I think that is an essential part of finding long-term pleasure or happiness, like being content with like I don't think you'll ever be happy with who you are if you aren't if you're constantly in an in-group and like afraid to express who you are. Or maybe that doesn't totally correlate, maybe I'm like kind of jumping, but yeah, I think that like a key part of finding happiness is finding one's true self, and so not being necessarily a part of an in-group, not feeding into that pleasurable feeling of fitting in, but rather being comfortable expressing yourself in a unique way and being comfortable being different than everyone else.
Yeah, I feel like I think that it would end up being more beneficial or more pleasurable for more people to not have in groups and be able to
That as well, yeah.
Identify with themselves
and
be themselves.
And then also, like, when you're not afraid to express uniqueness and you're okay with not being a part of the in, those people are generally, and I'd say I don't know, I'm gonna make up a percent, but I'm gonna say like 90% of the time, those are the people who are the quote unquote geniuses of the world, who are pushing humanity forward and coming up with all these new ideas, whether it be technology or philosophy or psychology. Like, the people who don't fit in are typically the people who are pushing us forward the most. And so I feel like they're a necessity for the benefit of humanity as a whole.
Yeah. People who haven't cared what society,
like the Zuck.
Yeah.
I feel like he is the prime example. Like, that dude is so socially clueless. And like,
yeah, he's just out there.
Yeah. But he doesn't give a fuck. This dude's rich.
Like, yeah, like even like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, like you can see like with all of these people that have like innovated and pushed.
And those are just
progress.
Technology.
Yeah, these are just technological.
And looking at history, like, okay, I always think of Nietzsche because that's just who was on my mind, but he was a fucking loser in real life. Like, like he was actually, like, people did not like this dude. He did not fit in. He had no friends, really. Like, he was just an outcast. And yet, one of the most genius people to ever exist. And, like, there's a plethora of examples. Like, a majority of people who are geniuses are these outcasts, are these people who aren't. And I think part of the reason is, so okay, I'm gonna share this other idea that I had that kind of ties into it. So what if being beautiful curses you to value beauty because you're told you are beautiful, you are good looking so many times that becomes a part of your identity, that becomes something you value because people are telling you it's valuable in you.
I was going to bring that
and
up.
so,
I was going to say, like, when I tell myself that I'm something, it's not as profound as when someone else tells me that I'm something.
True.
If someone ever says, like, it's hard when I go, I'm a kind person, and then I'm like, am I? But if I hear it multiple times, like, Kaden, you're so kind, it's like, then, like, how do I fight not labeling myself as kind when everyone around me is telling me that I'm kind?
But I think, and so, like, I guess kind of like going back to what I was saying is, if you are labeled as beautiful, or that's just one example, like, yeah, let's say you are labeled as beautiful, does that kind of like not maybe even make you, but push you towards valuing beauty as a whole and judging other people on their beauty because you've been judged and valued on your beauty, so you've been taught to value beauty, and that can be applied to other things like.
And knowledge seems to be the best way to combat that, and interacting with other individuals and really trying to understand everyone else, so then you're not stuck in your little, circle of only believing that beauty is the only thing that matters.
Yeah.
It's same with like people who only live in Utah. You go out of different states and you're like, wow, all these different things matter, even though growing up I was told only certain things matter. And then you go even further into different countries and you're like, man, I don't don't know anything.
Yeah. And one thing I'm starting to realize I haven't really even thought about very much is, like you had mentioned before, where people, like when people say that you are kind, it's a lot more profound than if you were to tell yourself that you're a kind person, and you feel more like you feel like you kind of fall into how others are describing you. And is it so bad to identify with descriptions of who you are rather than identifying with groups?
Is that not the same thing? Because is that not essentially what I was saying with like I am confident, or I am a kind person, or I am socially anxious, or is that not the same thing? Because won't you just be told like, oh, you're a shy person, you're an awkward person?
Yeah.
Isn't that?
Perhaps, yeah. I just haven't thought about it very much. So I was.
If you're told you're kind constantly, and then all of a sudden,
I think
you realize a few months have gone by and no one's told me that. Now a few years have gone by and no one's told me that, and that was the one thing I valued because everyone told me that that's what I was.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna crumble again.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I think also like part of the reason it's more reaffirming is you can tell yourself whatever the fuck you want.
Dude,
Like you can literally think
I'm
any
gonna tell
thought.
myself I'm rich.
Like exactly, you can think whatever you want, but it's other people. Like okay, so you can think whatever you want, but you may have a delusion, and the only
Other
thing that's
people
going.
determine what you are.
Well, I was gonna say like the only thing that breaks that delusion is other people. They keep you in check. They give you a reality check.
Yeah.
And so because of that, you can have whatever delusions you want about yourself. In that I am thinking I am a kind person, but when someone else tells you that, that's the reality check that you are, quote unquote, actually that, or at least that's how you're perceived as, because like whatever delusion you may have had, or it's obvious it's not a delusion because the reality check the person's giving you is not shattering that delusion, which isn't a delusion because it's not being shattered. So yeah, but like kind of going,
What if like you are really shy, and you have so much anxiety, so because of that you almost come off as rude because like you don't want to make eye contact, someone talks to you and you're just like your anxiety impulses take over, but at heart and like you know that your feelings, like you are a kind person, like you know how like that could be shattering because it's like what you really value is do you know what I mean? But other people are telling you differently, or just based off their actions you can tell that they don't actually see that. You know, so it's like you have to try to like break free sometimes.
Yeah, I feel like that more correlates with the issue of shyness, and like I think that is a flaw. I think that's something that should be worked on, and so maybe like I don't know exactly where I was going with that, but
shyness definitely seems like it's the fear of like social judgment, obviously. Because other than that, why else are you shy? But
and also just like not feeling for whatever reason low self-esteem.
Yeah.
Like just feeling like you aren't worth people's times, or like people are better than you, or you're just.
It's because of self-identifying, because other people identified whatever group they were in above you.
True.
And that put you below them, and so it goes back to that.
It's all a mess.
How do we untangle this, guys?
I don't even know.
We just need more woke people like us. That's what I'm saying. That's why it's my life mission. Gotta rework these values.
What's
Are
funny
you
is,
identifying as woke?
I am. Fuck.
even if you were like, you know, like someone like Nietzsche, you know, he was never like all these like, besides like Bill Gates and them, but it seems like these profound philosophers were never recognized until
after they're dead. Yeah.
So you will never get to experience it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've thought about is like, am I okay with that? And I don't know. Like, I think I've gotten to the point, not completely, but like, okay, I'm headed in the direction of being able to find like the or I guess value, or I guess come up with a value for my life, or the value of my life myself, not based on what other people would view or value my life. I phrased that so fucking poorly, but did you get what I was saying?
Yeah, like ideas do not happen, like they don't influence right away. You know, that's probably why it's like whatever you like, this podcast, whatever we're talking about, people might listen and think that it's not influencing them, but ideas slowly spread.
Yeah, people are always listening.
Yeah.
Like they may not be responding, and they may not take it in or change their.
So
should we be going for 212?
the meaning of life.
Oh yeah.
I think we might as well continue on our trajectory of just talking about self-identification.
Like the meaning of life is such a vague, such a broad.
I mean, we tend to go on
vague.
at least in the first episode, we go on tangents a lot, and in looking at the second episode, yeah, we're just going on a lot of tangents, but I like it. Like, hopefully the viewers don't mind, whatever viewers or listeners.
Oh yeah, and if we talk about like just the meaning of life, especially with how like closely we all like us three agree, this would be
unless we're just giving like factual, like, oh, Christianity think this is the meaning of life. Yeah.
And that's not why we're here. We're here to discuss our beliefs. It would be really awesome to have different people on here. Like
I think that's our goal. Yeah.
Someone who is open to discussing that's like extremely Mormon, like different religions. We can't hit all of them, but like it would be just interesting because I know when you look it up, you only really ever hear atheist versus Buddhism or atheist versus Muslim or Christianity, and that is it. But I'd like to hear like different. I don't know.
I haven't really thought about the idea of getting just like quote unquote randos on the podcast. I had just been thinking about like psychology, like various well-known people or like people who are professionals in their field.
I see.
But I do like that idea actually. Like
it would be cool to get like someone like really well known, but we might have to start with something lower. I would say family members, but I just don't want anything that is gonna be too emotionally. Like I don't want too much conflict,
Yeah.
And it's only because everyone that I know that's religious on my side would emotionally could be affected.
Yeah.
And I
meet some Dr. William Craig.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it's like because I know
William Lane Craig. You guys know that guy?
No.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Who's
Isn't
that?
he the crazy like anti-dinosaur Christian guy?
Oh, is he? I thought he maybe, but I from the debates I've seen with him, he actually seems pretty one of the more intelligent Christian debaters. Like he's the one who came up with the kalam-kalosmical argument.
There are some really intelligent people that
what is it? Kalam-kalosmical.
my professor's Christian.
Oh yeah, he was telling me about how like at the beginning of your class he was like, so I'm guessing everyone believes in God and free will, and then just moved on.
This is how he described free will. He didn't specifically say free will, but he started. I immediately knew that he was gonna bring it up, and I was like, oh good, like I love talking about this.
Yeah.
And he's like basically describing the whole like if we could calculate every single thing, like he was talking about that. He went on for like 10 minutes on how we could like if we could somehow achieve that, and then he goes, do you guys think that we could determine someone's actions? And someone raises their hand and says, so this seems to be the conflict between nature versus nurture. And he goes, exactly, and then moved on. And I was like, what?
That would be so frustrating.
And it was like so quick because I was like, oh, like he's my professor. I'm gonna give him the courtesy of having this build up.
Yeah.
Oh, someone raised their hand like before he's done talking. Like that's okay. Like it wasn't me. It didn't feel right to do that, but this kid is doing it. And then he responds, and the professor says, exactly, and then moves on to something else. And it took me like I was so surprised that I didn't immediately go like, hey.
Yeah.
I was just like, wait,
Wait,
are we
what?
moving
Like-
on to like somehow tie this back in, or like, because you're the professor and I'm new, like it's my first day, so I'm trying to figure out like if he's just tying this in from a different point of view now, or what was going on. And then by then like a few minutes has passed, and I was like,
He's not tying it back in.
nope.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna raise my hand now.
I always raise my not probably in that exact same scenario I wouldn't, but like I always raise my hand and ask questions, which because like
I did it with my psychology professor.
Yeah.
Because anytime he says like they believe in good or whatever they ask, I immediately, because it's like, what do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean by good?
Yeah. Like you can't just say that, and because everyone else in my class is Mormon since I go to UVU, and you know that they think that they know exactly what good is, and you might too, the professor, but like
Everybody has especially
you guys are on
people
the
that
same
were-
page, but I'm not.
Yeah, like the
I'm
three of
not.
us are on the same page. Like if we talk about like what is good or bad,
Yeah.
like we have some idea of what we mean.
That's
But
the
if
other problem
we-
with religion. They're so like think that only they know what is good. Whereas us, it's like we understand like that. Obviously, if you go into what is good, it's like
It ends up being
It's
a
gonna be
little
a
bit more
problem.
opinionated.
yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a little bit more opinionated as well as
Well, it's completely subjective.
yeah, it's completely
Based on a
subjective.
subjective goal. Yeah.
Yeah, and yeah, oh man, I would be so frustrated being in that class, or they just move on.
You know what I do now is because now I just don't go to class because he also puts it online for us to watch. So I turn it on and start playing Xbox until it's done, and then after that's done, I read what the lesson's about, and I actually get more information out of that because I'm not taught by someone who's extremely biased. You know,
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind if he I don't care that he's biased. You know, everyone is,
That's
but
so
but that
frustrating.
he's so biased that it's almost like he's trying to manipulate us to believe what he believes. And
Mhm.
the sad thing is everyone in that class is brand new to philosophy, so they're going to accept it,
Yeah.
possibly.
And possibly be
Yeah.
influenced for the rest of their lives.
Exactly.
Like, this
And-
may be the only philosophy they ever take, and like now they think they're woke and have these ideas that they're actually
Yeah.
unfounded.
Yeah, and it
Like that's the worst part is it's a philosophy teacher too. If this was their math teacher or something, then like okay, sure, but like this is supposed to be the most open-minded professor at your
Yeah,
college.
I know.
Like,
The first question he asked was, "Okay, raise your hand if you believe in God." And like I'm thinking, like with how diverse it is, like it's gonna be 50-50, maybe. It's UVU, maybe 1/3's gonna not raise their hand. Everyone except for me raised their hand. All 35 or 34
everyone else
kids.
probably was just scared of being judged.
That's what I was thinking. I was the only one, and I was like, dude, if we ever have a debate about this, it's gonna be me versus freaking 34
I would love
people.
that. I would fucking love that. Oh my god.
And then, the first question he asked us, I don't know if Colton told you, but he gave like a really small or like a kind of brief run. It was are morals objective or subjective? That's all he asked,
Mhm.
and
which one is better and why?
Yeah, what one is better and why, or like what one's correct and why, and he didn't just state like subjective or objective, like let's discuss this. He gave Plato's definition of objective morals, and then he gave
So like Plato's moral system
yeah
that are quote unquote objective.
pretty much,
Okay.
and then he gave
What are those?
a small it
Are
was
those
just
similar
like
to Sam Harris's?
no
Plato's
Plato's was
essentialist.
yeah Plato was like it wasn't like religious, but they still believed in gods.
Yeah,
So they thought it still came from gods or like a
Okay.
heaven, not a heaven, but they called it like the whole form and substances.
Yeah, I haven't read too much Plato or anything. Like I've done some.
You
but, like,
should, because it's really profound that it kind of came from nothing.
I do think Stoicism has a lot of good
Yeah.
good benefits to be derived from it. That's not
I
specifically.
think so. I enjoyed it because it's definitely
Is
the
Plato
building
Stoic?
blocks.
Considered a Stoic.
I know that for the certain Stoics, like I mean the specific Stoics were like Marcus Aurelius.
Yeah.
And I think that they really derived theirs from Plato, so they kind of tied
Okay.
theirs in. I think Plato was supposed to be. I know there was naturalists, and then I forget what they called.
I mean, there was also skepticism.
I don't wanna say
with
something that's wrong.
Diogenes, and then there was also like
Yeah.
there was the Pythagoras group, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is all the yeah.
It will blow your mind though, like reading the dialogues that Plato wrote as if he was Socrates, because there's no written books
Right.
on
Yeah.
Socrates. Like for an example, Socrates was trying to discuss. He was discussing that philosophers are deemed, or how useful they are. Someone came in and started saying, "Well, you guys are in politics," because at the time they were also politicians, and the what you call a true philosopher, Socrates, is actually useless. These people in government, they're actually doing something good. And Socrates said, "Well, these people are following money and fame." And then he gave an example and said, "You don't go to the dentist. I mean, the dentist doesn't sit there and advertise to go to him. You go to the dentist when you need to go to the dentist. And a true philosopher strives for knowledge and not fame."
Yeah.
And so and it was just kind of amazing that these people, like, I always imagine them to be like kind of, dumb, but for these people to actually be like
so wise and profound.
Yeah, like they actually
technically
thought.
they might be, they have less intelligence compared to us, but like
they are critical thinkers, and it is amazing that they're critical thinkers. So that's what's mind blowing about them, because like a lot of it, you read it and you're like, that's not true, but how you got there with how little base knowledge you had is profound. So that's why they're so important.
That was one thing that always appealed to me about Nietzsche, is just like he seemed to have written before his time.
Dude, and a lot of people, I get, this is actually funny, I was about to say, so he talked about Plato, and then the next one for subjectivism was Nietzsche, and he used a small quote, and it was completely taken out of context. I can't,
as all of his quotes are.
Yeah, and it
God
sounded,
is dead.
Yeah, it sounded as if he just was saying, there's no meaning to life, period, end. Like that's it.
I mean, I
so
can
of
see
course
how
every kid would go, nope.
Yeah.
Because they don't even know what subjective or objective moral systems are yet, and this is how he's teaching them. Of course they're not going to go that route.
Yeah.
Because they're going off of emotions. They have no background history. They haven't really thought about it. Yeah.
And like something that blew my mind is I forget how little people know about these things sometimes, and especially I'd assume even more so, like they have less clue about moral and subjective, or objective and subjective morals. Because in my psychology class, the teacher had to, and in my stats class, the teacher had to explain what placebo meant, what the placebo effect was. And that blew my mind. I was like, how the fuck is this just not common knowledge you learn in like 4th grade?
It's because we're going into school because we want to go into school. We've done our background. We've realized like, oh, my passion's actually learning this subject.
I feel like we've both done so much research, and like, even though it hasn't explicitly been research, like it's just been for the enjoyment.
We realized, yes, we need that label if we're going to go into these certain career fields. And maybe like my reason was maybe I would be taught in the proper way, because I realized I was kind of jumping around in philosophy and psychology.
True. And
there was a few things I was like, there might be some things that I'm missing, and I'm connecting dots before I'm missing like a building block, and I don't want it to crumble down. Like I want a solid foundation. Now I'm coming to realize that the best thing that school can teach you is how to critically think, and it gives you a platform to discuss with people. Other than that, maybe they give you some facts, but you have to think on your own to decide if that is a fact or not.
That's your, like, so there's a quote or something I heard from someone, and it was, the hardest thing to do in life is say no, in regards to knowing when to say no to people's ideas or beliefs. Knowing when someone has a good idea or thought and being like, okay, I agree with that. That's a good perspective to hold. Mm-hmm. And knowing when to say, no, that's not correct. Like, especially in school or in college, like knowing when to hold on to your own ideas and say no to that new idea. Yeah. Versus when to accept it. Like, that is such a difficult thing to do.
And especially probably for these kids who just came out of high school. And of course they're gonna, I have this problem sometimes when I'm reading like Nietzsche or someone whose IQ is out of this world. Yeah. I immediately find myself wanting to just immediately believe what they're saying, just based off of their
and the way they write too. It's like so elegant.
Yeah. And it's like, like Alan Watts. When I was first getting to Alan Watts, I was like, this guy speaks so well, and like some of the shit I don't even understand. He has to be right because he's so smart. Exactly. And so these kids right out of high school are listening to these professors telling them what is true, but then also saying, well, you also need to think for yourselves. And that is probably really confusing for them. And I find most of the kids going, I'm going to critically think against the kids who oppose the professor, because I was the only one who said it was subjective morals. And that's my I actually didn't even say it was subjective. I said I disagree with the first statement. Yeah. Because I did not want to agree to what he said was subjective morals.
And that, like, just tying back to like Nietzsche being misquoted, I feel like that is such a prevalent thing. Oh. Like, and granted, I feel like it's somewhat acceptable because he's been kind of he fluctuates in his ideas quite a bit. Like throughout his life, he's a very diverse person in his ideas, and that's something I appreciate about him. But like, it does make sense to where you can find a point in his writings, a point in his life where he probably was like, oh yeah, life has no meaning, and he was just super nihilistic about it.
Well, like what
But
were you
then-
talking about the like highs and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, based on your persona at the time,
Yeah.
and versus like later in his life, he wrote the Gay Science, and that is, I don't know if you've heard the concept amor fati.
oh man, I have, but I do not remember what.
So that's just Latin for love of life, but specifically in these terms, it means like love of fate. And so it's the idea that he came up with of, and it's a coping mechanism, but it's also kind of like I think it can be very beneficial for sure. It's you grow to learn to accept everything in your past as necessary, not just like you come to terms with it, but you grow to love and appreciate everything that happened in your past, all the good, all the bad, as necessary in shaping you towards a destiny. And the destiny he describes is not like some mystical supernatural destiny. It's destiny in the deterministic sense. So just like how you don't like deterministic free will, like we're just on a giant cause and effect chain, like everything that has happened to you is guiding you towards a certain direction. It's the same thing with destiny. Everything that is happening to you in your life is pushing you towards being or achieving a certain thing, and it's so essentially pushing you towards a destiny. So we each have a destiny in the sense that we're all being formed towards that destiny, towards achieving that destiny. Yeah.
I really like that.
And so
actually.
yeah, it's just like he has such a wide range of ideas, and some of them are very nihilistic and very dark and stuff. So I can see how that might be taken out of context. But like just in general, he is so misquoted and taken out of context that it's mind blowing. Like
Well, yeah,
like-
the God is dead one is the one that is
Yeah.
the most used one, where he even uses a madman as the character who is yelling it.
That's the worst example of, or the best example of him being
Yeah.
taken out of it, because all like it's like just like with politics nowadays, how like someone will say a 2-sentence thing and they'll like just quote 3 words of it.
Doesn't that irritate you?
Yeah, it pisses me off, and that's exactly what happened with this. Like they quoted "God is dead." They didn't do the rest of the quote. God is dead, and we have killed him.
I actually
Like-
get frustrated with all social media because of that, and it causes me to distrust everything anyone says because I'm constantly thinking this is possibly out of context because
Yeah.
it's like it's so common
It's
now.
a segmented fact, or like a partialized fact, a biased fact. Like
Yeah.
you can take any fact that supports one claim and then have a completely different, like have a fact that supports the complete opposite of that claim, and you'll have 2 facts that both make sense. However, you don't see the complete picture, and there's like a fact that correlates the two,
Yeah.
or whatever that. Yeah, but and so I think that's totally true. Like people are just. It just media in general, people just pump out one-sided things, and they'll see like one fact that supports their claim, and they'll think that therefore their entire claim is true.
Yeah.
When really that was just a misguided fact, or a fact based on misinformation, or whatever it may be. And
Right now it seems to be it's like 3 different things. It's either Joe Biden having a small little hard time speaking, whereas I have trouble speaking all the time. So glad no one's watching me. Or it's Trump, someone taking a small clip of him, being a little rude, which I mean, I'm rude all the time in my life. I mean, if someone just followed me around, they would have a huge compilation of videos. And the other thing is cops shooting black people.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that all those things are wrong. I'm just saying because I have no context, and those are the things that I'm only seeing.
specifically on that last part, like the Black Lives Matter and like cops shooting people, like that is, I think, one of the most one-sided or like misinformed like news being produced right now. Like I see, especially when the George Floyd marches were going on. Like there was this I saw on Twitter this thing about this guy with a machete. He like pulled a machete on a group of people, and then like the group of people beat the fuck out of him, and like some guy threw a rock at him. And so there was one clip where it just shows some guy like getting the fuck beat out of him, and like people throwing rocks at him, and that's all it was. And so like in that they're like, look at these marchers beating up a peaceful like, and then yeah, that's all the clip was. And then you see the full video, and the full video is this guy running around with a machete trying to hack at people, and then finally a group just tackle him and then beat the fuck out of him. And so like that's
sometimes there's another video that'll come out though,
Yeah.
and then it was actually that guy
Some
originally
guy-
was being attacked, and then there's a bigger video, and it's like there's so much context that we're
and
almost
even
out.
then, do you know that you have the full video, like, or the full story, like, and that you're just forced to make assumptions.
I know.
And like,
Yeah.
and they're forcing you, they're like pushing you to make assumptions that are completely
You have to
one-sided.
pick a side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or people have their side, and because they're excuse me,
Fine.
because people are on that side, they make assumptions that align with their side's agenda.
Yeah.
And I think it might be a cascading effect from perhaps social media, where I feel like a lot of people on social media, like, they just scroll through and make judgments on every post they see. So now, coming into the real world, everyone's beginning to feel more and more like they just need to make judgments on everything.
I could see that. Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, a very toxic thing. Just tying back to what we were saying earlier about judging, but just fuck
For sure.
politics.
Yeah, 2 thumbs down.
Just like pedophilia, 2 thumbs
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
I hate politics so much.
Yeah, it does definitely get
Like,
frustrating.
This is all meaningful to life, right?
Like
Yeah.
I hate.
I think the what is it, the title for the episode is gonna have to be changed to like identity, essentially, because I feel like that's the topic we hit on the most.
Like
Yeah.
We've hit a lot of topics, but I think like the main
Yeah.
topic has ended up being identity.
That's true.
We're
So
breaking the third wall again, or whatever. Is it the third wall? Fourth wall?
Fourth
Fourth
wall.
Fourth wall. That's right. Okay.
Third wall's over there.
Oh. But why is it not the fifth wall if typically a house will have 4 walls?
Because it's a stage reference where you have your 3 walls on
yeah.
a stage, and then the 4th wall is the audience.
Okay.
Some of the coolest movies though are the ones where they break the fourth wall.
Like Deadpool, dude. Oh, so inspiring.
I
Really
did,
makes
I did
you
not
think.
like that movie because it was so overhyped. Like, everyone was like, "Oh,
it
this is the
was
best
pretty
movie
hyped.
ever. This is the funniest movie ever." And then I see it, and it was good.
I
but,
got
like,
lucky. I
it
saw it
wasn't
the
that
first
good.
day it came out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was able to be that guy who said it was
you
the
guys
best
see there's a
thing
new
ever.
Borat movie coming out
Oh yeah.
on Amazon Prime only though.
Oh shoot.
Yeah.
I think I have that. I think I have Prime. I don't watch TV really anymore or
Same.
movies. I don't know why. It's video games,
Yeah,
obviously.
I haven't
or
watched Netflix or Hulu in forever. I just can't get into them. Like my
Same.
attention
No.
span, I think, is just not there.
and I know I'm gonna
Yeah.
stop watching the series like
Yeah.
midway through or even way before that.
And like, usually I'm fine now, but like, what used to be a huge issue for me is anytime I watch any acting, I just can't get over the fact that they're acting. Like, like that person crying right now, they're pretending to be sad about being heartbroken about some girl.
Yeah.
Like,
Or I analyze it too much. They say something and I can't get over like this
Yeah.
is wrong, so I
exactly,
dislike this
that, like,
movie
that
now.
doesn't make sense. Yeah, or
Or
yeah,
how there's
or like there's too many things that like don't make sense in the movie, or like
Yeah.
like
Mhm.
yeah.
Or it just being weird shit going on in movies. Like, have you seen the meme going around lately of what was it? I think it's like, I haven't seen the movie, but I think it's Lady Gaga's movie where at the end she just like
Stars Born.
she puts a finger, A Star
Or
Is Born,
something
and I
like
think she like has a finger on her forehead and drags it down to her chin, and people are just memeing the hell out of
I
it.
saw that.
Like, people are just like,
I'm gonna come on you.
yeah, people are making like videos of them sitting in their car just being like, "You like what we did last night?" and like doing a sexual
But
gesture.
if a show was only rational, it would be the most boring show ever. It would be a documentary. So maybe it wouldn't be boring, but
I feel like I end up watching documentaries more
Really?
than anything else.
because like when I was younger, like
Yeah.
I like especially before I ever even knew what love was, like I always was like trying to watch love movies, like romantic movies, because I wanted that feeling
Yeah.
because I couldn't get it
And
myself.
I feel like that's such a bad thing. I feel
Yeah,
like
I-
movies are shaping our idea of love and the perfect person, and like
Same with
finding-
video games though. It's like you're trying to strive for like a because you can quickly build up like a character on a video game, but
True.
it takes
Or
so much
it
time.
teaches you, it encourages you to value instant gratification.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think that's true.
And a lot of like the game mechanics within video games nowadays are meant to hook you and get you in that repeat
Like
cycle
especially
of
with
dopamine
World of Warcraft
fix.
and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I've
or
never
just like
played that,
unlocking
but-
achievements. That's one. That's a dopamine fix that like keeps you hooked, or leveling up, or
Yeah.
getting to the next rank, or unlocking a gun once you do a certain amount of kills. Like all
Yeah.
these little things are things to get you hooked. Like they are outsmarting you essentially by you feeding into these ploys.
I always think of like, this is making me think of like Call of Duty, like, because that's what I mainly play.
Uh-huh.
And it's like the skins on there.
Yeah.
They're absolutely worthless. And like, if you
I have
talk
such a drive to get it though.
Yeah, like
such a
I
drive.
have spent way too many hours just being like upset or just like frustrated, just not happy because I'm just grinding out weapons that I hate to use. It's not fun, but I'm only using them so I can get like the final skin that like you get on all your guns.
Because maybe you're gonna play with a friend and they get to see that you
And
did
then-
all
and
that
you
hard
feel good
work.
about
To
your-
see how many frustrated hours you put into the game.
You'll
Yeah.
feel good about yourself for just a little bit, and then it's just like,
Until
what
they
the
say,
fuck,
"Wow,
like-
you play this game too much."
Yeah.
And then instead of thinking you're cool, they just roast the fuck out of you. Like,
Yeah.
look at this loser, has his gun.
Mm-hmm.
Get a life.
Yeah, because whenever I see people with the skin that I want, I'm always just like, what a loser. He probably
Or when they're
does
so
nothing.
good at the game, you're just like, dude, you're probably ugly. You probably just sit there and play video games all the time.
Yeah.
Which is really rude of me, but it's because they just killed me and I like really emotionally.
And that's
got
pretty
hurt
rude
from
towards
that.
you. Yeah. You know.
It's just projecting. Just kidding.
Yeah, man.
Cool. Well, shall we wrap it up?
Yep.
That's what, 2 hours
Both of
and
those.
almost 40 minutes.
Holy oh, that was the wrong podcast.
So should we give anyone a prize who listens to the whole thing?
Oh yeah.
A Snickers bar?
For all you listeners who managed to stay until the very end, we are going to go ahead and do our first giveaway. All right, so all you have to do to enter the giveaway is go ahead and like and hit that subscribe button, but you also have to hit the bell for notifications.
And I think Colton said you're giving away an Xbox. Your Xbox?
No, we're giving away E-Bucks or
V-Bucks.
V-Bucks.
Yes.
V-Bucks.
All right, so for all you Fortnite gamers out there, if you want that new Travis Scott dance,
Yeah.
Shoot, I might. Oh man.
all right, but
Not
if
actually
you-
doing a giveaway.
Yes, that was a joke, by the way. In case I guess maybe our sarcasm hasn't picked up on yet, or our humor, but
That's true.
yeah, only
You
episode
think about
2.
that.
Yeah, but if you did listen to this entire 2 hour and 40-minute podcast, thank you very much.
I'll give you a kiss. Mwah.
There you go, 3 kisses from 3 very beautiful men.
Oh,
That'll
yeah.
be the end of every podcast.
Goodbye, honey.
This is
All right, but this was Barack Epperson
Colt Winters.
Kaden Peterson.
with
You,
oh, go ahead.
you want to do your
Oh,
quote?
that's okay. Good call. Good call.
Yeah.
All right. So I do a quote to end each episode, each podcast. If my phone will
All
work.
2 so far.
All of our podcasts.
Yeah. So far, we're very consistent on this.
All right. So let's see here.
Is it going to be the Michael Scott quote? You treat your hoe so well, and then one day she ain't yo ho no mo. Even though you said she was the best hoe in the world.
That's a beautiful poem. All right. So here we go. This was by Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And that's referring to the meaning of life. Find your fucking meaning, and you can endure any almost way of being. You can endure almost any life if you have your purpose, if you have your drive, if you have a reason to keep going. You can go through pretty much anything. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. So this was Skeptic Minds, episode 2, maybe titled Meaning of Life, maybe titled Self-Identity. Have a good one. 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 Have a good one.